Chapter 755. Humph, 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 humph. Humming a pleasant tune, Ilya hugged Noah's arm tightly. Her delicate and pretty face was full of joy and happiness. She followed Noah's footsteps and skipped forward. She seemed to be in a good mood. Noah, whose arm was tightly hugged by Ilya, was troubled. Strictly speaking, Ilya should be Noah's enemy. When she did not have Berserker by her side, it was undoubtedly the easiest to deal with. Even if Ilya had the command spell and could summon Berserker at any time, as long as he dealt with Ilya in the first blow, nothing would happen. Undoubtedly, in such a situation, Ilya was not even on guard against Noah. How could Noah not be troubled? After all, Noah did not feel any falsehood from Ilya's expression that was full of joy and happiness. In other words, Ilya either had some means to ensure that nothing would happen to her, or she did not consider that Noah would attack her at this time. Intuition told Noah that the reason why Ilya stuck to him so unscrupulously should not be the former, but the latter. In other words, Ilya did not consider that Noah would attack her at this time. Does Ilya trust Noah? That's not true. She just did not think about it from the bottom of her heart. From this aspect, Ilya was indeed quite naive. She did not have the self-awareness that a magician should have. Just like her appearance, she was just a little girl who had yet to reach adulthood. However, such a little girl who looked like she had yet to reach adulthood could casually make the decision to kill. Such two contradictory aspects were like the existence of an angel and a demon in that small body, making Noah very troubled. Of course, Noah did not think of attacking Ilya in this situation. Noah was not the kind of person who would do anything for a certain goal regardless of the target. Noah's methods were generally different from person to person. If the opponent was upright, then Noah would face it in an upright way. If the opponent was treacherous and cunning, then Noah wouldn't mind returning the favor and biting back at the opponent. In addition, although Noah and Ilya were enemies, it was only in terms of position. They did not have such a serious sense of mission like Rin and Osaka. In participating in the Holy Grail War, Noah's fundamental purpose was to find the world fragment, not to kill them all. Therefore, Noah could always be so carefree. However, Noah was a little unsure what kind of person Ilya was. An upright person? An upright person? A sinister and cunning person? None of them, right? Because of this, Noah, who was a little unsure of how to face Ilya, was so troubled. He could only accompany Ilya. Then, while Noah was still troubled, Ilya, who was hugging Noah's arm and standing together with Noah like a pair of siblings with a good relationship, suddenly pointed at a place and shook Noah's hand. "Hey, big brother, I want to eat that." Noah, who returned to his senses because of Ilya's voice, subconsciously looked in the direction of Ilya's little finger. There was a small stall there. "That's a crepe. It looks very delicious." Ilya used a pitiful gaze that could sink anyone and spoke with some hope in her voice. "Big brother, will you buy it for me to eat?" "Well, I don't mind." Noah scratched his cheek. "But aren't you rich? Can't you afford a crepe?" "Although I don't know what big brother is judging, I won't bring money. The money is all brought by the maid beside me," Ilya said with a smile. "Also, I only want to eat what big brother buys now." Ilya's words could easily capture the hearts of others, making them unable to help but feel tender love and joy. Noah wasn't directly captured by Ilya's cute words, but he also had no reason to refuse. He could only smile bitterly. "I'll go buy it, right? Just wait for me here." "Okay." Ilya nodded in satisfaction and obediently let go of Noah's hand. She put her small hands behind her back and looked around curiously. Seeing this, Noah couldn't help but reveal a smile. He turned around and walked in the direction of the crepe stall. When Noah bought 2 crepes from the stall and headed in Ilya's direction, the scene that entered his eyes left him slightly stunned. "Hey, little girl, are you walking on the streets alone?" Unknowingly, several men in their 30s and 40s had gathered around Ilya. They had hooligan-like expressions on their faces and were speaking to Ilya passionately. "Judging from your appearance, you're a foreigner, right? Don't you have a guardian by your side? Could it be that you're lost? Do you want us to bring you to your mother?" While saying those words, those middle-aged hoodlums were sizing up Ilya. It was as if they were evaluating a product. It was very dazzling. Don't tell me they're human traffickers? Noah couldn't help but think so. Facing the harassment of the hooligans, the innocent smile on Ilya's face had completely disappeared. Instead, it was replaced with a look of boredom and lack of interest. Undoubtedly, they're so much older than me, but they don't even know the most basic etiquette toward a lady. I see. So there's such people here too? Oh, you seem to be rather cultured. One of the middle-aged men twitched his brows and wore a somewhat vulgar smile on his face. Sorry, we're not gentlemen or ladies, but we know a lot about the matters between men and women. If you're curious, how about letting us teach you? The middle-aged man said and gestured to his companions around him. His companions immediately understood, and one of them even made a phone call. Not long after, a car drove over and stopped there, blocking the line of sight of the pedestrians in the surroundings. Looking at this, anyone could understand what was going on. Those people were a group of human traffickers. Ilya clearly didn't know what the people surrounding her were planning to do to her. But as a magician, Ilya more or less sensed the malice of others. At that moment, a coquettish smile hung on Ilya's immature but incomparably adorable face, and her ruby-like eyes were suffused with a cruel glint. It's a pity that Ilya isn't interested in you at all. Moreover, she feels that you're an eyesore. Eyesores should be thrown into the sewers and washed away with the sewage. Saying such cruel words with such a cute voice made all the middle-aged traffickers around her stiffen. Some of them couldn't even move. That wasn't a metaphor. They really couldn't move, because even if they were ordinary people, they could still instinctively feel it. The young girl in front of him seemed to have turned from harmless to extremely dangerous. The middle-aged man who had just gestured to his companions and used vulgar words to instigate Ilya shouted angrily, "You're just a brat. Come with us obediently." After saying that, the middle-aged man wanted to pounce on Ilya, but a hand suddenly landed on his shoulder. I should be the one saying that. Along with this sentence, the middle-aged man felt the hand on his shoulder suddenly tighten. Then his entire body floated up. That was the result of the other party forcefully throwing him. Bang! The middle-aged man heavily crashed into the door of the car that had come to pick them up. Moreover, he knocked his head against the door, causing his head to bleed. His head tilted to one side, and he fainted. Around them, the human traffickers turned pale with fright. However, before they could react, one after another, a hand was suddenly placed on their shoulders. Then, one after another, they flew out and crashed into the car as well. What's wrong? As soon as the assistant driver shouted this sentence, a fist was imprinted on his face. With a bang, the driver fainted. Chapter 756. Looking at the sudden development in front of her, Ilya was stunned. In front of Ilya, Noah appeared to have completed an insignificant task. He held 2 crepes in one hand and extended his other hand to pull open the door of the human trafficker. Then, he threw the badly battered human traffickers into the carriage one after another. Noah was not as merciful to these traffickers as he was to ordinary hooligans. There is no need for a guy who would even lay his hands on children to continue to survive in this world. This sentence contained both rationality and selfishness. In the world of the Dark Bullet, Noah was famous for the shelter of the cursed child. For the sake of those poor children, he even made the choice to let the Tokyo area be destroyed by primitive animals. As previously mentioned, Noah's way of treating people was different from person to person. Facing people who were upright, he would face them in the same upright manner. For insidious and cunning people, he would return the favor with the same insidious and cunning means. But children were not included in this list. Children as pure as a piece of white paper would walk towards the upright side or the insidious and cunning side in the future. It had not been decided yet. Therefore, for these children who were like white papers, waiting for the world, waiting for society, waiting for the environment, and waiting for others to dye their colors, Noah's treatment had always been biased. Therefore, Noah had no need to show mercy to these traffickers who trafficked children. At that moment, after Noah threw all the traffickers into the carriage, he turned around. Gotcha! The next moment, in the car full of traffickers, a slight sound sounded. Soon after, The carriage suddenly drove forward. In front of the car, there was an entrance to an expanded sewer under construction. The undriven car directly rushed into the entrance of the sewer under construction and fell into the sewer. Bang! Not long after, accompanied by a muffled sound that reverberated in the sealed tunnel, the pedestrians around the sewer entrance began to approach noisily. It was just as Ilya had said. The group of human traffickers were all thrown into the sewers and washed away with the dirty water. Noah did not even turn his head, ignoring the noise and clamor behind him, and handed a crepe to Ilya, who was still in a daze. "I bought the crepe for you." Ilya took the crepe reflexively, then finally reacted. She cast her gaze on Noah's face, and ripples appeared in her ruby-like eyes. "What's wrong?" Noah, who was stared at by Ilya, had a strange expression. "Is there something strange on my face?" Ilya shook her head and blinked. The expression in her eyes was brighter than ever. "Brother, are you protecting me?" "No, I'm just being nosy." Noah bitterly. "With your ability, you don't need my protection to deal with 1 or 2 traffickers, right?" "Liar, brother is protecting me." An unprecedented smile appeared on Ilya's face, and she hugged Noah with joy. "I'm so happy. Other than Berserker, there's actually someone who will protect Ilya. I'm so happy." "What do you mean?" Noah, who was hugged, wanted to bitterly smile again, but Ilya's words surprised him on the spot. "What do you mean by other than Berserker? There is actually someone who will protect you. Could it be that other than Berserker, there is no one who will protect you?" "No." Ilya hugged Noah, and with a smile on her face, she said something that would not make anyone happy. Even if there is, it wouldn't be to protect Ilya. Instead, it would be to protect Ahrensburg's works and the Holy Grail. Only Berserker would protect Ilya. Everyone said that Ilya's servant was used to protect Ilya. Hearing Ilya's words, Noah became more and more confused. Protect Einstein Baron's works and Holy Grail? What does that mean? Before Noah could come up with an answer, Ilya, who was tightly hugging Noah, suddenly raised her head and met Noah's gaze with her ruby-like eyes. Then, a smile that was no different from a demon's and as pure as an angel's appeared on Ilya's face, and she said these words. "I've decided I'm going to make Big Brother mine." After saying that, Ilya's ruby-like eyes flickered with a frightening light. An astonishing magic power aura emerged from Ilya's body, making Ilya's flickering eyes even brighter and more frightening. Magic power even passed through those beautiful eyes and was projected onto Noah's body. Feeling the magic power surging from Ilya's body being projected onto his body along with Ilya's gaze, Noah frowned. Projecting magic and magic power onto others through one's gaze, thereby producing magic effects. That was clearly the magic eye. In other words, Ilya was using the magic eye on Noah. Unfortunately, it had no effect on Noah. The magic power projected onto Noah through Ilya's magic eye had just touched him, but before it could take effect, it scattered as if it had hit a solid wall. The bright light in Ilya's ruby-like eyes suddenly dimmed, making Ilya reveal a surprised expression. "It didn't work?" "Unfortunately, magic doesn't work on me." Noah turned his gaze to the surprised Ilya. "However, I didn't expect that you would suddenly attack me." Noah finally understood more or less what kind of person this cute little girl in front of him was. She had the side of an innocent child and a cruel, ruthless, and indifferent side. He would do whatever he wanted to do and would never consider whether he would bring trouble to others or perhaps even bring trouble to himself. In short, she was a willful and reckless young lady who didn't know how to restrain herself at all. Once she had an idea, she would put into action, regardless of how dangerous it was. Her personality was already a bit twisted. Magic doesn't work on Big Brother? Ilya didn't realize how easily she made a move that would make others view her with hostility. She puffed up her cheeks, as if it was natural. "If that's the case, I won't be able to make Big Brother mine, right?" Seeing that Ilya didn't even have a trace of self-reflection, Noah stared at this little girl, and his tone became more or less ruthless. What do you think life is?" Noah's ruthless tone made Ilya unable to react. I won't say stupid things like life is precious. No matter where it is, there are some people who don't deserve pity even if they die. But, similarly, no matter where it is, there are some lives that shouldn't be lost for unknown reasons. Noah said indifferently, "That's why I hate killing innocent people." Since young, Makarov had said this to Noah more than once. Even if it was magic, if it touched life, it would become taboo. It wasn't because life was particularly precious. Instead, it was because treating life as something that could be used or discarded was twisted to begin with. Therefore, magic that touched life was a taboo among taboo. That theory was simply worthless in this world. Not to mention anything else, magicians were a group of existences that would casually kill. Noah wouldn't blindly listen to Makarov's words. Noah was flexible enough to listen to his grandfather's words. Indeed, some lives were very precious. But some lives were filthy and didn't deserve pity even if they died. And Noah was very disgusted with the indiscriminate killing of innocents that would erase life regardless of good or bad. Since he wanted to kill, then why not kill those who deserve to die? This was Noah's thought. I don't expect you to listen to me. Noah turned around. I only hope that you can at least consider it carefully. Leaving this sentence, Noah left. Looking at Noah's back that gradually disappeared into the distance, Ilya remained silent for a long time. Chapter 757. Noah didn't tell anyone about his accidental encounter with Ilya and the fact that they had spent some time together. As if nothing had happened, Noah went straight back to Inosaka's house. He found that Saber hadn't come out of her room, and she had been guarding Yamamoto Sakura the whole time. So, he went to the room that Inosaka had designated as his room to take a nap. If he didn't sleep now, he might not have a chance to sleep at night. After all, master and servant were active at night. If there were no problems on Archer's side, then tonight, Rintasaka would probably call Noah and act together. In fact, it was indeed as Noah expected. After it got dark, Inbin, who didn't know when he came back, knocked on Noah's door and didn't give Noah a chance to answer. Come to the hall. Archer has found Castor's base. Upon hearing this, Noah, who had replenished his energy, slowly curled up the corners of his mouth. In the hall of Inbin's house, the warm light illuminated the surroundings. Sitting on the sofa, which was equivalent to the head of the house, Inbin first glanced at Noah, who was sitting on a chair opposite to him, and then looked at Saber, who was sitting in another seat in a dignified posture. Why is Saber here? Noah shrugged, indicating that he didn't know, which made Inbin roll his eyes. Have you found Castor's base? Under Inbin's gaze, Saber said with a calm face, If you want to fight against Castor, then let me join you. For Saber's words, Noah smiled as if he had expected it. On the other hand, Rin Asaka continued to stare at Saber and spoke bluntly. What's your purpose? As a servant, I only have one purpose from beginning to end. Saber replied firmly. Destroy other servants and win this holy grail war. Is there anything wrong with that? No, there is nothing wrong with that. Inbin was not willing to be outdone. But our servants are also in your range of elimination, right? This is the same for you. It's just a matter of order. Although we are in a cooperative relationship, in the end, we still need to determine the winner. Saber fearlessly looked at Inbin's eyes. Sakura hasn't recovered her consciousness yet, which makes us very passive. Instead of being passive, it's better to follow your order. Rin Inosaka understood what he meant. In other words, you also want to form a cooperative relationship with us? Now that Master can act, I think this is the best policy. Saber glanced at Noah. Moreover, although we are enemies, the degree of kindness will not be affected by whether we are enemies or not. As a knight, I have the obligation to repay your kindness. Saber was referring to the fact that Noah had taken her in without asking for anything in return. So that's how it is. What a noble knight. Rin Inosaka said nonchalantly as he brushed his long hair aside. Well, with the help of the strongest Saber, it's a good thing for us. What do you think? The last sentence was directed at Noah. I have no opinion. Noah was also indifferent. Anyway, we can't fight now, so we might as well cooperate first and solve the other servants. Saber nodded in agreement. Very wise judgment. Then it's decided. Rin in Osaka tapped on the table and called out. Then, come out and explain, Archer. As soon as Inbin's words fell, Archer's figure appeared behind him. From the original spiritual state, he entered the physical state and entered the eyes of everyone present. Castor's current base is in Liudongji. As soon as he appeared, Archer gave such information with a unique and calm voice. This morning, Castor retreated to Liudongji, and then he didn't move. In order to confirm whether it was the witch's plot, I specially monitored the place for a day. Now, we can basically confirm that Liudongji is Castor's base. Liudongji. Noah and Inbin pondered at the same time. Liudongji. It was a temple in Fuyuki City, not a shrine. However, it was a very special place. Liudongji was a rare spiritual place in Fuyuki City. A witch actually hid in a temple? Noah curled his lips. It's really not flattering. Are you sure that Castor's base is in Liudongji? Saber also looked at Archer. Is it possible that Castor deliberately misled you? At first, I thought so too, but after careful investigation, I gave up on this suspicion. Archer closed his eyes. Castor has already set up a position in Liudongji, and the influence of that position has extended to the entire Fuyuki City. Now, all the residents of Fuyuki City have become Castor's magical storage. Their vitality has been extracted and converted into magical power, and all of them are flowing to Liudongji. What did you say? Inbin's face finally changed. Castor is extracting the vitality of the residents of Fuyuki City? Even Noah and Saber had their eyes fixed on him, let alone Rin and Naka. It can't be wrong, Archer said in a deep voice. If the range of influence is so wide, every master and servant should be aware of it. If you go out and look carefully, you will find the flow of magical power. The audience was suddenly silent. Don't think that I will just stand by and watch, Castor's servant. Rin Inbin bit his lips and immediately said, now that we have determined Castor's base, let's attack Liudongji tonight. Is that okay? As if he had already expected Inbin to say that, Archer asked as if he was ready. That place is Castor's base. Castor's ability will be more or less improved. Plus, the magical power of the entire Fuyuki City's residents will be used as a storage for the witch. Breaking him like this is like directly breaking into a trap. Is that okay? If it's just us, maybe we will really think about it. But now there are two masters and servants here. I don't think Castor's little trick will work. Inbin looked at Noah. By the way, can your rider come over? Rider can come over at any time. Noah replied calmly. However, with this lineup, I don't think we need Ryder to come out. Let her continue her task. In case something happens, I will directly use the command seal to summon Ryder. Inbin pondered for a moment and then nodded. Saber's heart slightly moved. Task? Don't worry about it. It's just a trivial matter. Noah spread his hands. Saber, since you plan to go with us, what are you going to do about Sakura? Is this Ling's magic workshop? Saber said without flinching. Then, Sakura should be safe here. Noah smiled non-committally. Safe? Of course she was safe. With the scabbard's protection, nothing will happen to Sakura. Then it's decided, Inbin said decisively. Tonight, we will attack Liudongji and kill Castor. Saber and Archer nodded at the same time. Noah looked out of the window, and his eyes flashed. Indeed, it's time to withdraw. Chapter 758. The night gradually deepened. At the foot of a mountain, Noah, Rin, Saber, and Rin raised their heads and looked ahead. To be more precise, they were looking upwards. None of them spoke. They were all silent. In front of Noah and the rest, there was a stone staircase on the mountain that wasn't very tall. The stone staircase was very long, as if it extended directly into the sky. It made them feel small and insignificant. The long stone staircase would definitely make anyone who wanted to climb it feel slightly dispirited. If a normal person wanted to climb the stone staircase, it would take at least 30 minutes. Fortunately, at the end of the stone staircase, Noah and the rest found a mountain gate. Behind a mountain gate was a temple called Ludong Temple. However, whether it was Noah, Rin Inbin, or Saber, they were not looking at the mountain gate or the long stone staircase. Instead, they were looking at a barrier that could not be seen with the naked eye. It was a barrier that enveloped the entire mountain. That's a barrier, right? Noah looked in front of him and asked without turning his head. A barrier used to drive people away? Or a concealment barrier? What a pity. Rin Inosaka's expression became serious. Neither. That's a barrier used on servants. Saber gave the answer directly, but her expression was also very serious. Moreover, it doesn't look like it was set up by someone. It's a naturally formed barrier against spirits, right? A naturally formed barrier? Noah was surprised. There's such a barrier? There's nothing to be surprised about. You must have heard of it before. Rin Inosaka answered for Noah. Places like temples and shrines are filled with very dense spiritual energy. This kind of spiritual energy can repel all kinds of monsters and monsters. It's a sacred place where those monsters and monsters can't approach. This is a similar place. Saber continued Rin Inosaka's words and continued to explain to Noah. Servants are spirits. Although they aren't ghosts or spirits, they're similar existences. Therefore, other than entering through the mountain gate, servants shouldn't be able to enter Ludong Temple directly, right? Even servants can be affected. Noah continued to look at the high mountain gate. That's really surprising. This should be the only special place, right? Rin Inosaka said to Noah. I don't know if it's because some eminent monk once passed away here, or because Ludong Temple itself is an unusually spiritual place, or maybe someone deliberately set it up behind the scenes. All in all, the property of expelling spirits around this temple seems to have been strengthened to the limit. Except for this stone staircase, there's no way for servant to enter. In other words, as a servant, Saber has to barge in openly. There's no way to sneak in, right? Noah shrugged helplessly. Then what should we do? Of course, we have to break indirectly. Rin Inosaka clenched his fist. I must teach that arrogant caster a lesson. After saying this, Rin Inosaka directly stepped onto the stone staircase and walked towards the mountain gate. Seeing this, Noah and Saber looked at each other and followed. As for Archer, he didn't follow from the beginning. As an archer, Rin Inosaka sent Archer to occupy a commanding position in the surrounding area, ready to support at any time. However, Noah was more or less suspicious. Was there really a place higher than the mountain in front of him? Could it be that Rin Inosaka was habitually dropping the ball? With such doubts, the three of them climbed up the stone staircase and walked towards the mountain gate. However, when the three of them arrived at the mountain gate, Noah and Saber stopped at the same time. Noah stretched out his hand and directly pulled Rin Inosaka to his side. Saber, on the other hand, raised her invisible sword and pointed it in the direction of the mountain gate. Rin Inosaka, who was about to complain to Noah, saw it. In front of the mountain gate, there was a person. A man who was as tall as Archer, had a long dark blue ponytail, and was holding a 2-meter-long katana in his hand. He was wearing a light purple kimono and had a tree branch in the corner of his mouth. He was looking down at Noah and his team with an elegant smile. Servant. Rin Inosaka was surprised. Yes, that man was also a servant. Not caster. Noah was also surprised. There's a second servant in Ryodong Temple. Even Saber was caught off guard. She raised her sword and spoke in a solemn voice. Who are you? Hearing Saber's question, the elegant man's smile didn't fade. He just gently raised the katana in his hand and introduced himself. Assassin Servant Sasaki Kojiro. The introduction of the assassin servant stunned everyone, including Noah. That servant had even revealed his real name? Was he not afraid that someone would find his weakness and research his noble phantasm? And Sasaki Kojiro? Although this name was not as famous as those heroes in myths and legends, it was a name that almost everyone in this country knew. That was because it came from a very famous swordsman from the Warring States period of this country. At that moment, Noah and Rin Inosaka's eyes flashed. Profession, Assassin Pseudo-Master. Real name, Sasaki Kojiro Attribute. Neutral, evil ability points. Strength, Cedar ability. E-agility. A plus magic power, a luck, a noble phantasm, profession skills, or a concealment. D since he wasn't an official assassin class servant. Even though this skill was classified as a class skill, it was a skill that the assassin himself possessed. As a martial artist, it wasn't a skill for sneaking and hiding. Instead, it was a skill that the assassin used to blend into his surroundings. It wasn't a skill that was honed for assassination. It wasn't as effective as the assassin's ability to conceal his presence. However, if he eliminated his presence, he would still be an opponent that even a servant would have a hard time detecting. Preservation skills. Mind's Eye, Pseudo-8 belonged to the so-called premonition or sixth sense skills. It was different from Mind's Eye, True, which was based on prediction supported by experience. It was based on the ability to predict danger based on his natural talent. He could see through the opponent's weapon and fighting style in just a few confrontations. That pair of eyes, even among the servants, was second to none. Transparency. B+ generally, the ability called mirrors still water referred to the spiritual realm that had been reached after rigorous training. After learning this skill, one could always maintain a clear and calm heart. They could even be indifferent to any situation, even if it was their own death. In battle, they could even completely nullify the confusion and fear caused by the opponent, which was represented by magic that interfered with the mind. Zhonghe's experience. Even if the same move was repeated countless times against the same opponent, the accuracy of the hit would not decrease. In other words, this was an ability that had the effect of not being seen through by the enemy. No matter how many times the enemy wanted to retreat or challenge again, they would not be able to see through the moves that were supported by this skill. They would always be forced to fight the same battle as the first time they met. Swallow Return. A+, it was a sword technique that simultaneously slashed apart the opponent's killing sword from 3 different directions. It was neither a precious artifact nor a phenomenon that borrowed magic. It was a sword that was slashed out from the real world, disregarding the concept of time and space, and completely slashed out with 2 swords at the same time. It was a superb technique that was truly capable of slashing out 3 swords at the same time, in the same second, and at the same moment. It was a multi-dimensional distortion phenomenon that surpassed the elements of speed, delicacy, and feints. Although there were limitations, it had also reached the high-level domain of part of the realm of magic. Chapter 759. When the ability value of Assassin, who claimed to be Sasaki Kojuro, entered Noah's mind, even Noah couldn't help but be stunned on the spot. Renenbin probably couldn't see it, but Noah really saw it. In the part of Assassin's profession, there was a special standard word, fake. Assassin fake? What does this mean? Undoubtedly, he was Assassin's servant. Why did he specifically add the word fake? On top of that, the part of Assassin's class skill, which was the part where the aura was blocked, clearly stated that Assassin wasn't a real assassin, which puzzled Noah even more. Coupled with the various information revealed by Assassin's skills, Noah's doubts in his heart were even stronger. Let's not talk about the ability value for the time being. From the information revealed by the opponent's skills, it could be seen that the opponent was not so much an assassin, but a saber. Not only did he possess a high mental state, but he also possessed a deadly sword technique. If it were not for the fact that his ability value did not meet the excessive requirements of the saber class, Noah would definitely be more willing to believe that his opponent was a saber. After all, the assassin job class was a job class that specialized in stealth and assassination techniques. The elegant man in front of him was standing in front of everyone, holding a long weapon that was obviously not suitable for assassination at all. There was nothing that matched with Assassin's profession. Also, the opponent's noble phantasm was the same as Archer's, which was also empty. There were too many doubts. Rin Enbin, who didn't have as much information as Noah, clicked his tongue and held a gem in his hand. So that's how it is, knowing that there is no way to resist us with your own strength. Caster cooperated with your master, right? Work together with my master? Assassin closed her eyes and smiled without denying it. No, you're wrong. Originally, I don't have a master to speak of. As soon as this sentence came out, Before everyone could react, a somewhat flirtatious laughter echoed. "He's right, little girl. If assassin has a master, then I am his master." Accompanied by such a sentence, a black shadow suddenly appeared behind assassin. She lifted her black robe, revealing only the part of her face below her eyes, and laughed out loud. "If you want to say why, it's because I'm the one who summoned him." Castor. Rin Inbin's beautiful face suddenly tightened. Her hand holding the gem was getting tighter and tighter, and she even prepared to throw it. Rin in Osaka really had a lot of hostility towards Castor. However, it wasn't because of the hostility and excitement in her heart, but because of the message in Castor's words. "Are you the one who summoned assassin?" Noah looked straight at Castor. "What do you mean by that?" "That's what it means, Rider's master." Castor's purplish-red lips made a sound of laughter. This Holy Grail War was originally a game where the master, as a magician, summoned the servant and fought with each other. So, why can't I, as a magician, summon the servant and become a master? Servant summoned servant. Saber, who was holding her sword, had a grimace on her cute face. "Did you violate the rules of the Holy Grail War?" The so-called Holy Grail War was actually a ritual. The ritual required the 7 chosen masters to summon their servants, and then they would fight until there was only one servant left. Then the ritual would be declared over. There was no doubt that Castor violated the rules of the Holy Grail War by summoning a servant and taking away the position of a master. It was precisely because of this that the assassin summoned by Castor was not the real assassin. Instead, it was Sasaki Kojuro who did not meet the requirements of the assassin class at all. Noah finally understood the meaning of the word fake. "I didn't expect that in order to win, you would not hesitate to go to this extent. You mercilessly absorbed the vitality of the entire Fuyuki City's residents as magical power, which violated the rules. I have to say, I underestimated your unscrupulous means." "Unscrupulous means? Violated the rules?" Noah's words directly made Castor laugh. "Don't joke around. Rider's Master is just a boring ritual established by a group of modern magicians. Although this level of ritual is a bit cumbersome, in my opinion, there are too many loopholes. If it weren't for the prize, I wouldn't mind directly dissolving the whole ritual. You want to use me as a pawn in the ritual? It's already very unpleasant." Hearing this, Noah finally recalled what had happened. The Castor in front of him was from the mythological era, and he mastered the magic of the mythological era. His magic attainments have surpassed the existence of magicians. In the eyes of a magician of the god generation whose magic attainments could be said to be terrifying, the ritual established by the 3 magician families called the Holy Grail War was indeed not a big deal, right? It's a magician's privilege to exploit the loopholes of the ritual itself and seize the results for himself. Castor sneered again and again. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame the magicians who established this ritual for not having the ability to master it. After that, Castor waved his hand as if he was tired of continuing the conversation. "So, the time for a pleasant chat is almost over. Everyone, let me wash away the shame during the day." Rin in Osaka and Saber immediately took a fighting stance. Only Noah still looked calm, looking straight at Castor. "What? Don't you want to let your master fight again?" Hearing that, Castor sneered on his face. "That's not necessary." However, just as these words fell, a low voice that could be said to be emotionless, not even the slightest fluctuation, resounded from within the mountain gate. "This time, your judgment is wrong, Castor." Castor was shocked when he heard the voice. He turned his head and looked inside the mountain gate. At the same time, Noah and the others also looked inside the mountain gate. He saw a tall and thin man in a suit, who was about 30 or 40 years old, leaning against the pillar of the mountain gate at some point in time. He looked down with emotionless eyes. "You?" Rin in Osaka was shocked. "Gamu-sensei?" "Sensei?" Noah raised his eyebrows. "He's a teacher in your school?" "Master." Castor also spoke, and there was a little bit of panic in his expression. "How can you come to this place? I know you're here for my safety." Gamu walked slowly. His voice was full of indifference. "But Caster, this time the enemy is only you and Assassin. Two people can't deal with it. Caster was speechless. A barbarian like me should come out and fight. It's not suitable for me to stay in the back. Gamu said indifferently. So, Caster, start to deal with the enemy now. Hearing that, Caster's face changed a few times, and finally, he took a deep breath. I understand, Soichiro Gamu. The atmosphere of the scene suddenly became very tense. This atmosphere told Noah. Tonight, he would not stop as he had done before. Chapter 760. Udash. The whistling mountain wind directly swept through the entire mountain path, causing the robes of the two groups of people standing in front of the mountain gate at the middle and top of the stone steps to flutter loudly in the wind. Looking up at Gamu, Soichiro, Caster, and Assassin standing in front of the mountain gate, Noah couldn't help but ask Rin Inbin on the side. Inbin, are you okay? Noah asked this sentence inexplicably. However, Rin in Osaka understood him. Don't worry about me. Rin Inbin's voice didn't have the slightest trace of reluctance. He seemed to have recovered his calmness. Although Gamu Soichiro is a teacher in our school, my relationship with him is not as good as you think. You don't need to worry about me. The problem is that the number of servants we have to deal with has changed from 1 to 2. From 1 to 2? Caster, who clearly heard Rin Inbin's words, suddenly snickered. You're wrong again, little girl. You don't have to deal with 2 servants, but 3. 3. Noah, Rin Inbin, and Saber's hearts skipped a beat. That's right, 3. Caster's smile was getting more and more creepy, as if he was trying to make people feel uneasy. A servant suddenly came to me and said that his master wanted a little girl, but the lineup on your side was a little bit against the rules, so he came to me and wanted to cooperate with me. Speaking of this, Caster's voice became a little bit malicious. So, now let's guess, where did that servant go? This time, Caster's words really brought uneasiness to Rin Inbin. Even Saber couldn't help but bite her lips. Her face finally emerged a thorny expression. Only Noah, after hearing Caster's words, almost immediately launched his sensing ability. In the range of Noah's sensing ability, except for the people present, there were almost no other servants. However, Noah didn't think that Caster was talking nonsense. In other words, the servant who cooperated with Caster was not near Ludong Temple. Undoubtedly, they had cooperated, but the person was not here. This fact allowed Noah to come to a conclusion. That servant was obviously not used to deal with the people here. Thinking of this, Noah immediately thought of another possibility. He was shocked and grabbed Rin Inbin. Summon Archer. Quick! When Rin Inbin heard Noah's words, he was also stunned. Then, he inferred a possibility from Noah's words, and his expression changed. Without any hesitation, Rin Inbin raised his hand with the command seal over his head. Come here quickly. Archer! The command seal engraved on the back of Rin Inbin's hand immediately glowed red. Clank! Red light flashed. And it didn't take long for the command seal on the back of Rin Inbin's hand to turn it into a huge amount of magic power that rippled through the entire space. Buzz! Suddenly, the space around Rin Inbin suddenly distorted, as if something was spat out and a red body was squeezed out. The person who came was naturally Archer, who was summoned by Rin Inbin. Pucci. However, as soon as he appeared, Archer spat out a mouthful of blood and knelt on the ground, clutching his chest. His tanned face became extremely pale, and he was violently gasping for breath. Taking a closer look, Archer's body was covered in scorch marks, and one of his hands was bleeding like a crack. He was in a sorry state. Archer, Rin Inbin, and Saber were shocked at the same time, and even Noah's face slightly sank. Sure enough, the opponent's purpose was to first destroy Archer, who could provide support from a distance. Otherwise, with Archer's support, the situation would be very unfavorable for Caster and Assassin. Fortunately, Rin Inbin summoned Archer. Otherwise, Archer would be likely to directly retreat from the opponent's attack. Did you find out so quickly? Seeing that Archer was seriously injured, but he didn't need to retreat, Caster snorted. Sure enough, it's not good to give too many hints, I should reflect on myself. Ignoring Castor's regretful words, Noah still looked at the sky. Because of the unexpected result, his face became calmer and calmer. Lancer is the one who cooperated with you, right? Among the 7 servants, only Saber, Castor, and Assassin were present. Ryder was performing Noah's task, so it was impossible for him to attack Archer. And Archer himself naturally wouldn't beat himself up like this. So, only Berserker and Lancer could cooperate with Castor. From Noah's point of view, Ilya wouldn't be interested in cooperating with Castor at all. With the almost immortal Berserker as a servant, Ilya didn't need to cooperate with anyone. So, only Lancer was left. Very smart, Ryder's master. But even if you know it's useless, this is the result of being my enemy. Castor raised his hand that was wearing a black glove. Finally, I'll ask you one more time, Ryder's master. Do you want to cooperate with me? Hearing this, Noah smiled, but there was no trace of smile in his eyes. I'm sorry, I don't even have the slightest idea of cooperating with the unscrupulous witch. Castor's face suddenly froze, and his face immediately became distorted. You call me a witch, right? What? Do you hate people calling you a witch? But what you've done has only made people more convinced that you're a witch. Noah said as if he was repeating a fact. Your anger is not worth a single cent. Castor raised his head fiercely, and his body surged with violent magic. Since that's the case, I'll vent all my anger at being worthless in your eyes on you. Go, Assassin. Hearing Castor's angry voice, Assassin smiled and slowly rubbed her feet on the ground. She lifted the long sword in her hand, and her whole body suddenly tensed up as if she was ready to attack. Bang! With the sound of a clear footstep, Assassin's figure turned into a vague shadow, and in a flash, she appeared in front of Noah's group. Clang! A sword suddenly appeared in front of Noah's group, like an arc-shaped half-moon, and cut toward Noah's neck like lightning. The strong wind contained in the sword directly tore the air, and a fallen leaf was neatly divided into 2 halves in an instant. Clang! However, at this moment, another sword light suddenly appeared in the space like a golden flash. It slashed across and directly collided with the long saber that was slashing at Noah's neck. Clang! Amidst the loud and clear sound of metal clashing, a wave of berserk strength chi shook out from the space where the 2 sword lights clashed. Immediately, it transformed into a tangible strength chi that surged out in all directions. Bang! As if they were shocked by the shock wave, the 2 figures with the sword light were knocked back at the same time by the explosion of the chi. Oh! Assassin, who was knocked back to the mountain gate above, raised her eyebrows. Saber? Saber held the invisible sword, and her eyes were like lightning, looking at Assassin above. Let me be your opponent. Be careful, Saber. Noah, who was standing behind Saber, said, Your opponent's ability value may not be comparable to yours, but their agility may be better than yours, and they don't use brute force. I am afraid that their sword skills are better than yours. Saber nodded her head heavily. Chapter 761. Clang! With the heavy sound of steel clashing against steel, the real battle began. The invisible sword that couldn't be seen with the naked eye collided with the katana that was obviously too long. Sparks burst out on the uneven stone stairs. Archer! Noah stepped forward and said to Archer, who was half kneeling on the ground. His body was covered in black charred marks and fresh blood. Let's go. Let's go. Noah said to Archer, who was half kneeling on the ground. Are you okay? No matter how you look at it, I don't look like I can do it, right? Archer's weak but stubborn voice entered Noah's ears. But, at least, you don't need to worry about me here, whether it's my master or myself. As long as we don't die, there's no problem. Archer. Rin Inbin gritted his teeth, but he also knew that it was better not to be pretentious in this situation, so he could only obediently stay behind Archer. Hearing the movement from behind, Noah, who could imagine what kind of situation was behind him, smiled, raised his head, and looked at Castor in front of the mountain gate. Then, let's end this quickly. After that, Noah rushed out like a cheetah, suddenly turned into a black shadow and rushed toward Castor's direction. Facing Castor, "You actually dare to rush toward me. You're really stupid." Castor sneered, raised his black-gloved hand, and pointed in the direction of Noah. Buzz! A magic circle with the shape of an eyeball suddenly rotated around Castor, and an amazing amount of magical power was gathered inside it. In the next moment, a dazzling beam of light shot out from the magic circle, piercing through the space like a laser beam, violently rushing toward Noah's direction. Looking at the dazzling beam of light, Noah's eyes flashed, but he didn't dodge at all. Castor was full of ridicule. As if he was looking at a fool, he directly collided with the beam of light. Bang! 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 A heavy muffled sound was heard one after another. However, it was not the sound of the beam of light falling on Noah's body, but the sound of the beam of light directly hitting Noah's body, making the beam of light hit a solid wall, and suddenly burst open. What? Castor's face greatly changed. As a magician with Kanzaki's magic, his magic was actually ineffective against an ordinary human, which made Castor suffer a great impact. Whoosh! Noah took advantage of this gap. His figure suddenly rushed forward like lightning, and in a flash he arrived in front of Castor, whose face changed greatly. Whoosh! With a whistling wind, his fist like a cannonball directly hit Castor's abdomen. Whoosh! However, almost at the same time, another fist that carried the same whistling sound of the wind shot over like a bullet and collided with Noah's fist. Bang! Accompanied by a muffled sound, the two fists collided with each other. One of them was shaken in the direction of the mountain gate, and the other one was shaken back to the stone stairs and fell back to the middle position. After stabilizing his body, Noah, who fell back to the middle position of the stone stairs, slowly raised his head and looked up. He saw that in front of Castor, a man was standing in front of Castor, looking at Noah blankly with his two fists in front of his body, one above the other and the other below the other, with a ferocious posture like a python that was about to bite its prey, was standing in front of Castor, looking at Noah blankly. Just now, the person who disintegrated Noah's punch was the man in front of him, Gumu Soichiro, Castor's master. This man had actually managed to block Noah's punch. Even if he didn't use enhanced magic, Noah's punch couldn't be blocked by an ordinary person. But the man in front of him did block Noah's punch. You seem to be surprised. Gumu Soichiro lowered his fist and looked straight at Noah without any emotion. I heard from Castor that you seem to be the same type of master as me. Since you can rely on enhanced magic to fight with a servant, why can't I? When Gumu Soichiro said that, no one noticed it. On Gumu Soichiro's fist, a magical halo was fluctuating. Although it was not the same as Noah's, it was definitely the effect of the enhanced magic. This man, like Noah, strengthened his body and used his own fighting skills to fight. However, there was no trace of his own magic on Gumu Soichiro's body. The magic around Gumu Soichiro's two fists was completely the aura of Castor's magic. In other words, Gumu Soichiro's magic was Castor's magic. If Noah's fighting skills were his own, then Gumu Soichiro's fighting skills were his own. But Gumu Soichiro's fighting skills were his own, but the magic was Castor's. Although it's just a punch, I can still see from that punch that you seem to be someone who also knows how to hone your own fighting skills. Gumu Soichiro said such a sentence in an almost ruthless tone. This is the first time I have met the same type of person, but I have honed my fighting skills for more than 20 years. How many years have you honed your fighting skills? Are you trying to say that my combat skills are weaker than yours because I've been training for a shorter period of time than you? Noah narrowed his eyes and suddenly smiled. Then let's give it a try. After that, on Noah's fist, the magic lines representing enhanced magic spread like electric wires and quickly wrapped Noah's fist in it. Boom! The soles of his feet slammed on the ground, stirring up a muffled sound. Noah's figure once again turned into a black shadow. With a whistling wind, he rushed straight toward Gumu Soichiro. The oncoming wind made Gumu Soichiro have a little reaction. However, Gumu Soichiro did not choose to dodge. His tall and thin body was like an iron tower standing in the same place. Until the whistling wind approached him, he finally made a move. Raising a pair of fists, he once again assumed the posture of a python with its jaws wide open, ready to pounce on its prey. Suddenly, a rich magical power curled around Gu-Mu Soichiro's fists, as if he was wearing a pair of invisible steel gloves. He slowly clenched his fists. Ooh! The two fists that were also enhanced, with a harsh sound of wind, almost at the same time, bombarded out. Noah's fist was like a bomb that contained a terrifying power. It blasted out directly. Gu-Mu Soichiro's fist, on the other hand, flashed back and forth like a rear-end missile that could freely change its trajectory. It was also like a python that was twisting its soft body. It drew an unpredictable trajectory in space and bit in Noah's direction. And just like Gu-Mu Soichiro could see the level of Noah's fighting skills with just one punch, Noah also clearly felt in that punch. When that punch blasted out, the unpredictable trajectory had already blocked all his retreat routes, and the surrounding space was all shrouded in the attack range. Even if Noah changed his direction, the punch would definitely be like a venomous snake that would chase after him and bite him. This Gu-Mu Soichiro's fist technique could not be described as unfathomable, but could only be described as strange. Noah, who understood this, curled up the corners of his mouth. His body tensed up, and he spun around. His entire arm was like a whip, swinging forward with a whistling sound. All of a sudden, the fist that was originally like a powerful cannonball turned into a whip carrying an iron ball. It suddenly struck out and collided with Gu-Mu Soichiro's fist. Boom! Suddenly, a wave of energy rippled out from the center of their fists, causing the surrounding atmosphere to be shaken until it was on the verge of collapse. Chapter 762. Bang! The muffled sound was like a direct hit to a person's heart, abrupt and loud. The force transmitted from the fist caused Gu-Mu Zongakiro to take 2 steps back. On the other hand, Noah's body only trembled a few times, and then he stabilized. This fact also made Gu-Mu Zongakiro's eyes condensed. Although Gu-Mu Zongakiro's fist technique honed for a much longer time than Noah, but the emphasis is on the word strange. It's a fist technique based on strangeness. Of course, a fist technique based on strangeness. Once seen through, there's no trace of threat. Just one move. Just one move. Noah saw through Gu-Mu Zongakiro's fist technique, and Gu-Mu Zongakiro couldn't help but become dignified. Gu-Mu Zongakiro didn't know that Noah has a talent called the ability of perception. Even if the time to hone fighting skills is not as long as Gu-Mu Zongakiro, but with the ability of perception, Gu-Mu Zongakiro's fist technique has no secret in front of Noah. In addition to the collision just now, Noah has more or less understood Gu-Mu Zongakiro's strength. In the aspect of strength, although the magician of Kanzai used magical power to strengthen, Gu-Mu Zongakiro's physical ability is still not as good as Noah's, who has been strengthened by the virus of protozoa and used the magic enhancement. In the aspect of skill, Gu-Mu Zongakiro's fist technique is indeed strange, but it's only strange in one aspect. If used in a surprise attack, perhaps even the unaware saber will suffer a big loss, but for Noah, who has the ability of perception, there's no threat. Purely in the aspect of skill, Noah doesn't have much of an advantage. After all, the opponent's fist technique was honed for more than 20 years. Noah, excluding the sword technique, in the aspect of barehanded fighting, at most 2 or 3 years. However, even if there's no advantage, Noah's fighting skills are not much worse than Gu-Mu Zongakiro's. As long as Noah was given some time to get used to it, Noah would be able to break that set of fist techniques in minutes. Understanding this point, Noah did not choose to be passive. Instead, he took the initiative to dodge and once again rushed forward. However, this time, Noah gave up on a head-on clash. Wong! Along with the sound of mana vibrating, streak-like mana patterns also spread across Noah's feet, causing Noah's speed to soar instantly. Zong Ichiro-sama. Caster stretched out his hand, and a burst of magic surged in his hand. Wong! Suddenly, The soles of Gumu Soichiro's feet were also surrounded by a halo of magic. At that moment, Gumu Soichiro also took advantage of his own soaring foot strength. His figure was like a ghost, constantly flashing around Noah's body. His fists brought a burst of wind, pulling up a fist shadow like a fierce viper, falling in the direction of Noah like a storm. Noah did not have much of a reaction to Gumu Zangakuro's almost continuous attacks. He was like a leaf that moved back and forth under the attack of a wild wind. He faced the fist wind and dodged if he could. If he could not dodge, he would throw out a punch. His punch accurately landed on Gumu Zangakuro's fist. Occasionally, he would throw out a heavy punch. The increasingly heavy force on it caused Gumu Zangakuro to have no choice but to withdraw. While Noah and Gumu Soichiro were engaged in a battle of skills, on the other side, the two swordsmen were engaged in a white-hot sword battle. Clang, 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 clang. That was the constant collision of the golden sword and the silver sword, stirring up a sound of steel clashing. On the golden side was Saber, who was wielding an invisible sword and attacking ferociously like a stormy sea. On the silver side was Assassin, who held an extremely long weapon in her hand. She moved as if she was dancing. She swung her long sword gracefully, yet she was able to perfectly parry the storm of sword strikes every time. Both of them were absolute heroes of the sword. However, the two people's swords were not the same. If Saber's swordsmanship had the effect of training the body, then Assassin's swordsmanship had the effect of training one's spirit and state of mind. Her swordsmanship did not emphasize on physical strength, but it had strict requirements on technique. Under such circumstances, this battle was like a collision of strength and softness. Every time Saber's invisible sword slashed at Assassin, Assassin could easily dodge it. Then, the long sword in her hand swung in a perfect arc, bringing with it a sharp force, slashing in Saber's direction. Every time Assassin's dancing long sword slashed in a difficult path toward Saber, Saber's intuition skill would sense it, and she would move the invisible sword in her hand, blocking Assassin's seemingly soft sword. In short, neither of them could do anything to the other. Undoubtedly, in terms of ability value, Saber was much higher than Assassin, but she could not do anything to Assassin. In terms of technique, Assassin was much better than Saber, but because Saber's ability value was too high, she could not make an effective attack. One wanted to crush the opponent with strength. The other wanted to defeat the opponent with skill. In the end, neither of them could do anything to the other. Of course, in terms of ability value, Saber had an overwhelming advantage. Even if it was a battle of attrition, the one to fall would definitely be Assassin, whose stamina and magic power were not as good as Saber's. The problem was that Assassin also had an advantage. That was, Assassin had taken advantage of the terrain advantage of high ground. One was at the top of the stairs. The other was at the bottom of the stairs. Assassin, who was standing at the top of the stairs, did not move at all. She only needed to wave the long sword in her hand, and with her superb sword skills and the extraordinary length of the long sword, she could easily block Saber's slashes. Saber, who was standing at the bottom of the stairs, wanted to rush up countless times, but she was constantly attacked by the moonlight like slashes from above. Under the continuous sparks, she could not even take a step forward. When a sword attacked from a high place, whether it was dodging or defending, it was more exhausting than when it was on flat ground. Moreover, Assassin, who occupied the high ground, only needed to defend that position, and Saber would definitely not be able to rush up. Even if she did, it would be a waste of energy. Both servants had their own advantages. As a result, this tug-of-war situation where they couldn't win after a long time appeared. Under such circumstances, Saber couldn't help but feel a little anxious. Undoubtedly, she had the absolute advantage in terms of ability value, but she could not defeat her opponent. It was no wonder that Saber was anxious. Just like what Noah said, this person's sword skills are better than mine. No, it's way better than mine. Using superior skills and the terrain to make up for the lack of strength. Assassin was the embodiment of this point. Of course, if that was the case, Saber would still have a way to deal with it. What she was afraid of was that this servant with low ability value had hidden some decisive, noble phantasm. This was the scariest thing about every servant. Just as Saber was having such thoughts, Assassin's elegant voice was heard from above. "You don't have to be so cautious of me. I don't have any decisive, noble phantasm. Or rather, I don't even have one." Assassin's sudden words made Saber stand up in shock. This man had actually revealed his trump card. "Unlike heroes like you who enjoy fame, I'm just a nobody. I don't have any powerful weapon. The only thing I can rely on is this sword in my hand." Assassin looked down at Saber with a smile on her face. "The only thing I can show you is this sword skill that I've spent my entire life training." After saying that, Assassin abruptly turned her body to the side and pulled the long sword in her hand behind her back to block the attack. At that moment, Saber felt it. It was as heavy as the shadow of death. Chapter 763. Saber could only watch as Assassin suddenly turned her body sideways. She pulled the long sword behind her back and held it up. Saber's warning bells rang in her head. Saber, who had a skill called intuition, was able to sense it clearly. At this moment, as Assassin assumed her stance, a demonic aura surged from her body. It was a deadly threat called death. Saber's intuition told her that if she continued to let Assassin do as she pleased without doing anything, she would definitely end up in a miserable state. Saber pointed her invisible sword at Assassin as if it was a conditioned reflex. Her body was like a ferocious beast as she suddenly charged forward. Unfortunately, Saber's actions were in vain. Although it wasn't a very long time, it was more than enough for Assassin. Secret sword. With a soft murmur, Assassin suddenly opened her eyes. Her gaze was as sharp as a blade as it shot towards Saber's direction. Swallow return. When the name of the famous demonic sword was released from Assassin's mouth, the word death was directly reflected in Saber's eyes. Clang! Along with the sound of the swords, 3 crescent-like blade lights suddenly flashed out from the space, as if they had penetrated the space directly. They were like the scythe of the Grim Reaper, flying from the distant hell towards Saber's direction. Although there were only 3 sword lights, the 3 sword lights instantly enveloped the space around Saber, blocking all of Saber's escape routes. With the deadly shadow of death, they approached her. At this moment, Saber's intuition was like a crazy cicada, constantly chirping. The skill called Swallow Return was absolutely undodgeable. If she tried to dodge it, she would only be reduced to the fate of being cut in half. Before this knowledge was transmitted to Saber's mind, Saber's nerves, driven by her intuition, reacted in advance. Almost instinctively, Saber's body surged with violent magical power. Bang! A gust of wind suddenly erupted from Saber's invisible sword. Wind King Barrier, invisible air. As if it had reached the highest stage of accumulation, it was fiercely compressed together, as if it had reached a critical point. The storm was like a violent impact, surging out from Saber's invisible sword. The strong storm with a sharp whistling sound, with the sword in Saber's hand as the center, fiercely vibrated and met the 3 sword lights that were approaching like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. Dong! A loud sound was heard. It was the sound of the 3 crescent-like sword lights colliding with the storm. As if the 3 crescent moons had collided with the shock wave, a violent wave of wind violently swept in all directions. Crack! The stone steps on the ground cracked open from the impact. Pa! The trees that were closer to the explosion were shattered cleanly. The 3 sword lights ruthlessly cut the storm apart, and then their momentum became slower and slower. In the end, they were directly covered by the storm and disappeared from the space. Seeing this, Assassin's face finally changed. She stomped her feet and quickly retreated, creating a distance between them. However, her eyes were fixed on the center of the storm. Phew! There, Saber, who was in the middle of the storm, heaved a heavy sigh, raised her head, and looked into Assassin's eyes. What a terrifying swordsmanship! If I hadn't released my relic, I would have been defeated. Although you don't have a relic, you have a swordsmanship that can reach the level of a relic. You're indeed a famous swordsman." Hearing Saber's generous praise, Assassin still did not speak. This was because Assassin's gaze was completely taken away by the bright object. It was the sword in Saber's hand. She did not know when, but a sword appeared in Saber's hand. It was shining with a bright golden light. The body of the sword was as beautiful as mithril, and the blade was made of gold. The hilt was blue, and the tip was inlaid with a gem. It was a very dazzling knight sword. Assassin was certain. In this world, there was definitely no other sword that was as dazzling as the one in front of her. "Holy sword." Assassin's voice was more or less hoarse. "I see. You have such a dazzling holy sword. Saber, your real name. Since it has come to this, there's no point in hiding it anymore." Saber seemed to have predicted this situation. She raised the dazzling holy sword in her hand and pointed it at Assassin. "My name is Artoria Pendragon. I am the Queen of Great Britain, King Arthur." As if to praise the name that was enough to shake the heavens and the earth, the entire world suddenly became silent, and there was not a trace of movement. Wind enchantment, invisible air. That was one of Saber's noble artifacts. Its body was wind, and it used compressed wind to wrap around the sword. It changed the refractive index of light and wrapped around Saber's sword, causing the sword to be hidden. It was a noble artifact that could not be seen with the naked eye. There were 3 functions of this noble artifact. 1. It could make it difficult for the enemy to distinguish the size and trajectory of the sword. 2. When necessary, it could release the compressed wind into an extremely explosive force. 3. It was used to hide Saber's true noble artifact. It was because Saber's noble artifact, the golden holy sword, was too famous. It was because he had obtained the holy sword that the world-renowned Night King was able to win 12 major battles in a short span of 10 years, becoming the King of Britain who was known by everyone. The Lake Sprite was its former owner. Avalon, which had the name of Fairyland, was its scabbard. The King's Sword was its other name. It was also known as the Lake Sword. The Lake Sprite gave King Arthur the Holy Sword, Excalibur. In this world, there was no other holy sword more famous than it. That's why you need to hide this sword. Once the sword is exposed, you won't be able to hide your real name anymore. Am I right? Assassin straightened her back as if she was mocking him, but also as if she was smiling bitterly. "It seems that being too famous is not a good thing, Night King." Saying such a sentence, Assassin's face once again showed an elegant and leisurely smile. However, there's nothing more delightful than having a showdown with the legendary strongest holy sword. After saying that, Assassin turned her body again, pulled the long sword behind her back, and looked at Saber with a burning gaze. "Then, use that holy sword of yours to receive my secret sword and defeat me." Saber silently reached out her other hand, holding the sword with both hands, and fearlessly faced Assassin. "As you wish." On the stone stairs, the knight holding the golden holy sword and the swordsman holding the silver sword looked at each other. In the next moment, the two rushed at each other at the same time. A golden sword light and 3 crescent-like sword light collided with each other. Poochie, accompanied by a tearing sound, a large amount of red blood suddenly splashed into the air. As for the 2 people standing at the top and bottom of the stone steps, they had already missed each other. Saber, who stood at the top of the stone stairs, still held the holy sword in her hand and lowered her head in silence. Assassin, who stood at the bottom of the stone stairs, maintained her posture of wielding her sword and also lowered her head in silence. Taking a closer look, in front of Assassin, there was a huge wound that split diagonally from her shoulder to the ground. Assassin, who lowered her head, squeezed out a laugh. "You win, King Arthur." Leaving this sentence, the figure of Assassin, whose real name was Sasaki Kojiro, gradually became illusory. Finally, she disappeared on the spot. Assassin out. Chapter 764. You win, King Arthur. When this sentence echoed in the air and entered Saber's ears, Saber felt it. Behind her, The scent of assassin disappeared little by little until it completely disappeared. Opening her eyes and staring at the holy sword in her hand, Saber whispered softly as if she was talking to the swordsman who was no longer there. As a servant with low ability and no noble phantasm, you can use your sword technique to release my wind barrier, invisible air, and use the holy sword. You should be proud, Sasaki Kojiro. The main function of Saber's wind barrier, invisible air, was to hide the Excalibur so that her real name and noble phantasm would not be exposed. Therefore, even though the invisible wind barrier had the effect of concealing weapons, and if used well, the effect would be amazing. However, in order to maintain the effect of this noble phantasm, Saber's mana was constantly being depleted, and she was unable to fully utilize it. Once the wind barrier, invisible air, was released, Saber, who did not need to maintain the wind barrier, invisible air, was able to use all of her magical power and all of her power to display her true strength. Therefore, although it was just a simple matter of turning the holy sword from invisible to tangible, it meant that Saber had used all of her strength. If a numerical value must be used to compare, in the case of maintaining the wind barrier, invisible air, Saber's strength was probably around 80% or 90% of her peak. Only by releasing the wind barrier, invisible air, and taking out her holy sword, Saber could concentrate all of her magical power to maintain the wind barrier, invisible air, and display her full strength. A servant with low ability and no noble phantasm could force Saber to this extent. It was indeed something to be proud of. Pung! Just when the winner was decided between Saber and Assassin, from the other side of the stone steps, a heavy muffled sound echoed in the air. Whoosh! Following the heavy muffled sound, a figure flew out like an arrow leaving a bow, carrying a sharp sound as it broke through the air and heavily smashed into the pillar of the mountain gate. Poochie! Then, a mouthful of blood spurted out from that person's mouth. His body was like a puppet with a broken string, and slowly fell down. It was only then that Saber reacted. She quickly raised her head and looked in the direction of the mountain gate. Soichiro-sama. Castor let out a sorrowful cry and looked at the figure below the mountain gate with extreme resentment. He said in a hysterical voice, "You! How dare you!" The one who had heavily smashed into the pillar of the mountain gate was, shockingly, Gumu Zangakiro. At the foot of the mountain gate, Noah turned his body sideways and looked straight at Gumu Soichiro, who had hit the pillar, and said with a calm face, "See? You can't win just because you've trained for a long time, right?" To be honest, Kugi Soichiro-sama's fist technique was quite exquisite. It's just that the fist technique was too focused on the word strange. Although the moves were very subtle and strange, if it was used for a surprise attack, as long as the opponent was slightly careless, it was possible to kill the opponent, even if the opponent was stronger than Kugi Soichiro. But because of this, if the opponent saw through the fist technique or was vigilant in advance, then the fist technique without the effect of strange would be of little use. At least, for Noah, who had extraordinary sensing ability and exquisite fighting skills, it was true. Therefore, after seeing through Kugi Soichiro's fist technique, Kugi Soichiro could no longer fight with Noah and was directly defeated by Noah. After all, in any case, even if he didn't use the power, Noah could compete with the highest level of servant. There were strong and weak servants. Kugi Soichiro, who was strengthened by Castor's magic, could indeed compete with the servant. However, with Kugi Soichiro's strength, there was no way to compete with the highest level of servant, such as Berserker. So, the result was doomed. It was impossible for Kugi Soichiro not to understand this point. Therefore, Castor's support became the most important. Unfortunately, magic has no effect on me. Castor can only be reduced to a spectator. Noah glanced at Castor and said such a sentence with a smile. "And do you think I don't know that you have been waiting for me to use the magic cannon?" Castor's face changed in an instant. A divine magician who doesn't even care about a large-scale ritual like the Holy Grail War. You must have a countermeasure against my magic cannon, right? Noah sneered. Although the power of that magic has been greatly improved because of my magical power, after all, its predecessor is still the magic bullet. For magic, it's impossible that you don't have a way to deal with it. If it weren't for my magic enhancement, I'm afraid that you would even have a countermeasure against it, right? I have to say, your brain is really good. Not only did you prepare the card assassin, but you also pulled Lancer to your side. Even Kugi Soichiro, the master who can compete with the servant, is on your side. Noah's side. However, you're not the only smart person in this world. You are smart, it's not a problem. The problem is that you don't treat others as fools. If you can think of it, others can also think of it. If you have a hidden card, others will naturally have it too. You didn't see that I have the ability to make magic ineffective. This is your biggest mistake. After that, Noah looked at Castor. Checkmate, Castor. This sentence made Castor completely excited. No, I have prepared so much. I will never lose here. After that, Castor raised one of his hands above his head. Buzz. Suddenly, the entire mountain where Ludong Temple was located began to tremble, and a huge amount of magical power was poured into Castor's body. With the turbulent flow of magical power pouring into Castor's body, Castor's magical power became more and more violent. That magical power was all absorbed from the residents of Fuyuki City, right? I don't believe that even if it's a magic that can burn Ludong Temple, you can't completely nullify it. In that sharp voice, a staff suddenly appeared in Castor's hand. Whoosh! However, just when Castor was about to use the magic that could burn Ludong Temple, an arrow with flame-like magical power flashed through the space, like a meteor piercing the sky, and shot toward Castor. Pucci! The meteor-like arrow directly penetrated Castor's body and came out from the back of Castor's heart. Castor's expression, movements, and a huge amount of magical power in his body were all stagnant. Turning his head stiffly, Castor looked at the direction where the arrow came from. There, Archer was kneeling on the ground with blood on his mouth, holding a bow in his hand. His face was pale, and he sneered. This is a gift for you, which Archer, who was almost killed by Lancer because of Castor's calculation, got his revenge at this most critical moment. Archer, in a very unwilling cry, Castor's body gradually dissipated, and finally, he followed Assassin's path. Looking at Castor's figure gradually disappeared, Gamu Soichiro, who was leaning against the pillar of the mountain gate, closed his eyes. Castor exit. Chapter 765. Ho! The mountain wind once again blew past the stone stairs in front of the mountain gate. It was as if the tense atmosphere in the air had been swept away as it slowly blew past. After Castor and Assassin left the arena, Komoi Soichiro leaned against the pillar of the mountain gate and closed his eyes. Noah, Rin Inbin, Saber, and Archer didn't know what to say for a while, so they stayed in the same place and fell into silence. Tonight's battle could be regarded as the real cruel and ferocious side of the Holy Grail War. The probing battle like before no longer existed, and it was replaced by a real battle. Tonight, the two servants took the lead to withdraw, announcing the victory of Noah's team. However, in the face of victory that was achieved through killing, almost none of the four present could feel a sense of accomplishment and joy of victory. Noah and Rin Inbin looked at each other, then they looked at the mountain gate above at the same time. To be more precise, it should be said that they looked at Gamu Soichiro, who was leaning on the stone pillar of the mountain gate, as if he was already dead. Then Noah spoke. I don't have a hobby of killing people. Don't make it sound like I like to kill people. Rin Inbin, who was about to say something, was silenced by Noah's words. After glaring at Noah, he sighed and looked at Gamu Soichiro and said, Don't worry, I'm not going to do anything. You have already lost. Gamu-sensei, if you don't want to be killed by other masters, you should quickly escape to the church and seek refuge. In such a case, generally, it was impossible to leave a master alive. After all, even if the servant has withdrawn, as long as the master is not dead and still has the command seal, then they will not lose the qualification to continue to participate in the Holy Grail War. If they are lucky or have the ability, the master who still has the command seal can sign a contract with another servant and continue to participate in the Holy Grail War. In order to prevent such a thing from happening, during the Holy Grail War, the master will be obliterated. Gomu Soichiro seemed to be clear about this point. He opened his eyes, as indifferent as before, as if he didn't care about his life at all, and said expressionlessly, "Are you not going to kill me? I'm sorry, I don't have a hobby of killing people." Rin Inbin turned his head away. "So, before I change my mind, you should quickly escape to the church." As soon as this sentence fell, a sneer echoed in the forest. Unfortunately, there is no way for this person to survive, even if he escapes to the church. So the loser should obey the rules and directly leave here. Such a voice came from afar, drilling into the ears of everyone present. Everyone present was shocked. They all turned their heads and looked at the source of the voice. Of course, Noah, because Noah didn't feel that someone was coming. Of course, it wasn't because the other party hid from Noah's sensing ability. It was because the other party wasn't even within Noah's sensing range. He just let his voice pass. Then Noah and the rest saw it. In the direction of the voice, a luxurious-looking spear suddenly shot out, like a bullet, directly landing on Gomu Soichiro's body. Puchi, the sound of a body being pierced through resounded in the sky above Ludong Temple. Gomu Soichiro, whose chest was pierced, spat out a muffled groan, his eyes wide open, but his expression remained the same. There was no change at all. Immediately, Gomu Soichiro maintained this appearance and gradually lost his vitality. Gomu Soichiro dead. The sudden change shocked Noah and the rest. "Who?" Saber yelled, stomped on the ground, and rushed out like a gust of wind, chasing the source of the voice and the spear. Rin in Osaka wanted to chase after her, but Noah pulled her back. Ever since they came to Ludong Temple, Rin in Osaka had been pulled by Noah. Moreover, every time she was pulled, it meant that something bad was about to happen. This made Rin in Osaka a little anxious. "What's wrong now?" Hearing this, Noah didn't say anything. He only smiled bitterly, turned his head, and looked at Archer, who was still half kneeling on the ground. Meeting Noah's gaze, Archer, who was clutching his chest, smiled bitterly. "I really can't hide from you." Archer's words made Rin in Osaka have a bad feeling. What's wrong?" Hearing Rin in Osaka's words, Noah and Archer didn't answer. Under such circumstances, Archer suddenly said this sentence. "Do you know where I came from?" Noah and Rin in Osaka were both stunned. However, there was a reason why Archer said this. "All right, you still don't know, right?" Archer looked at Noah and said helplessly, "Actually, Rin didn't know my identity, including my real name." This time, Noah was really surprised. He looked at Rin in Osaka. It was fine if others didn't know. As Archer's master, how could Rin in Osaka not know Archer's real name? Could it be that Rin in Osaka was so bad that she forgot to ask for the servant's real name? "It's not my fault," Rin in Osaka quickly said. During the summoning process, Archer's memory seemed to be in a mess. He couldn't even remember who he was. "That's why I didn't know." "Well, I guess that's what happened." Archer smiled helplessly. "Now, let me tell you where I came from." "You?" Rin in Osaka was shocked. "You've recovered your memory? Don't expect too much. I'm not a famous hero, and I'm not a character that appears in legends. Perhaps, in this world, no one knows my name." Archer closed his eyes. "If you want to know why, it's because I'm a heroic spirit from the future." Noah and Rin in Osaka frowned at the same time. A heroic spirit from the future. This was not something to be surprised about. Heroic spirits were spirits that had left the world and existed outside of it. They were not bound by the time and space of the world itself. Therefore, the heroic spirit throne that existed outside of the world had gathered heroes from the past, present, and even the future. Therefore, it was not strange that Archer was a heroic spirit from the future. Yes, there's nothing strange about a heroic spirit from the future. You're just wondering why I'm telling you this, right? Archer seemed to have seen through Noah and Rin Enbin's thoughts as he spoke calmly. Now that things have come to this, there's nothing to hide. Regardless of what happened to me after I became a heroic spirit, before I became a heroic spirit, I was already living in this era. Noah and Rin in Osaka looked at each other in dismay when they heard this. Noah's frown deepened as he asked with uncertainty. In other words, before you became a heroic spirit, you were still a human. Now you're in this world? That's strange, isn't it? Archer said self-deprecatingly. But you're only half right. Half? Noah was confused. What do you mean? Before I became a heroic spirit, I was still a human living in this era, Archer said in a deep voice. But I'm not in this world. After hearing Archer's words, Noah's heart skipped a beat. Even Rin in Osaka seemed to have thought of something and blurted it out. Parallel world? Correct. Archer's expression was complicated. Otherwise, there's no way to explain why I don't exist in this world. Noah and Rin in Osaka understood Archer's words. In other words, Archer was from this era when he was alive. However, in this world, in this era, Archer did not exist when he was alive. In that case, the only explanation left was the parallel world. Chapter 766. The so-called parallel worlds actually refer to worlds that were similar, but had some differences in certain aspects. Just like two sides of a mirror, parallel worlds were like mirrors that looked at each other. They were on different parallel lines and would only look at each other, but would not interact with each other. The difference was that if you looked at a normal mirror, the inside and outside of the mirror would be the same. Parallel worlds, however, would have differences in certain aspects. For example, Archer was one such example. Undoubtedly, he existed in this era when he was alive, but there was no Archer in this era when he was alive. This meant that Archer did not exist in this era when he was alive. Instead, he existed in this era of another parallel world. After a long period of time, he achieved greatness and became a heroic spirit. It's basically confirmed that I don't exist in this world. At least, I didn't find myself in this world. Archer's voice was complicated, but also relieved. Perhaps this is a good thing. A good thing? Rin in Osaka asked. Why? Why would there be a reason? Archer said sarcastically. No matter who it is, they will be dissatisfied with their past. Unfortunately, no matter which world it is, there is no such thing as a regret medicine. As for me, my dissatisfaction is so great that I feel like it's a good thing that I don't exist anymore. Noah went silent. Let's not talk about whether Archer was right or wrong. Noah felt that no matter which world it was, there were plenty of people with unbearable pasts. The Archer's servant in front of him was obviously one of them. Rin in Osaka stared at Archer as if she was trying to see through his heart. She bit her lips. Why are you suddenly saying this? Why? Archer's expression revealed a hint of helplessness. I just feel like if I don't say it now, I won't have a chance to say it in the future. The bad premonition in Rin Enbin's heart suddenly grew stronger, causing her to bite her lips harder and harder. Archer sighed and finally let go of his hand that was covering his chest. When Archer removed his hand from his chest and let Noah and Rin Enbin see his chest, Noah and Rin Enbin reacted differently. Noah seemed to have expected this and closed his eyes. Rin in Osaka's eyes widened as he fell silent. On Archer's chest, where his heart was, there was a hole. A large amount of blood seeped out and dyed Archer's clothes red. As you can see, Archer forced a smile. When I was ambushed by Lancer, my heart was taken away by that deadly magic gun right from the start. It's already not bad that I'm able to hold on until now. The ominous premonition came true. Rin Enbin gritted his teeth, his expression filled with unwillingness. He had no choice but to accept this. Archer's heart had been pierced through. If he wasn't a spirit and had been holding on, he would have died a long time ago. Archer's departure meant that Rin Enbin had lost her master status. Of course, Rin Enbin still had the command curse. If she could find another servant to contract with, she could continue to participate in the Holy Grail War as a master. However, losing the servant that he had summoned was already a loss for Rin Osaka. For a girl like her who saw victory as her mission, It was hard to accept this fact. Rin Enbin didn't feel as sad about Archer's disappearance. After all, the disappearance of the servant didn't mean that they were gone. Originally, the servants in the Holy Grail War were just the avatars of the heroic spirits in the outer world. Archer's disappearance meant that he had returned to the seat of heroic spirits. He didn't really die. "I'm sorry, Archer," Rin Enbin smiled weakly. "If I didn't ask you to provide long-range support and asked you to come with us, you wouldn't have been attacked by Lancer, and you wouldn't have had to leave now. I'm always like this. I always make mistakes at the most crucial moments. If you want to resent me, resent me. You think too much, Rin. I don't have any reason to resent you." Archer shook his head. "I don't want to fulfill my wish, so I don't care much about the Holy Grail. I only fought because you wanted to. I don't resent anyone. However, I hope that you will remember what I'm about to say." Archer's expression suddenly became serious. "You need to be careful. The Holy Grail might not be a good thing." Archer's sudden words shocked Noah and Rin Enbin. What did he mean by that? As I said before, I was also a person of this era. Archer said word by word under Noah and Rin Enbin's surprised expression. "Actually, in my life, I participated in the Holy Grail War as a master, and I almost won the Holy Grail." Noah and Rin Enbin looked at each other. "Once obtained the Holy Grail?" Noah asked in return. "In other words, in the end, you didn't get the Holy Grail?" "It's not that I didn't get it, but I gave up." Archer didn't keep them in suspense anymore. "Do you know the principle behind this ritual called the Holy Grail War?" Noah and Rin Enbin nodded at the same time. As everyone knew, there was a spiritual vein under Fuyuki City. The so-called spiritual vein, in fact, could also be called the Earth Vein. It was connected to the source of infinite magic, and there was an extremely large amount of magic flowing through the terrain. This was the case in Mayo City. This was also the case in Fuyuki City. The Holy Grail War that existed in Fuyuki City was based on this foundation. The three magicians, Enbin, Jiantong, and Einsteinberg, built a large-scale magic array on the land of Fuyuki City. This large-scale magic array had the ability to draw magic from Fuyuki City's Earth Vein and store it. With the magic power stored in this large-scale magic circle as the source, about every 60 years, the magic power in the veins of Fuyuki City would accumulate enough to support the launch of the Holy Grail War, which would be the beginning of the Holy Grail War. Most of the magic needed to summon the servant was provided by this magic array. Therefore, this large-scale magic array was also called the Great Holy Grail. Selecting a candidate for the master, bestowing the stigmata upon the master, and making contact with the seat of heroic spirits outside the world, allowing the master to effortlessly summon heroic spirits, which should have been incomparably difficult. These were all the functions of the Great Holy Grail. In addition to the Great Holy Grail, there was also a small Holy Grail. That was the real Holy Grail. This small Holy Grail was said to be made by the Einsteinberg family. Because of the knowledge instilled by Gaia and Aleia, Noah remembered that the little Holy Grail was a vessel responsible for collecting the souls of the 6 servants who died in the Holy Grail War. When they returned to the outside of the world, they used their power to pierce a hole in the world. Then, they used the huge amount of magic accumulated in the Great Holy Grail to fix the hole, thereby creating a door to the outside of the world. It was a vessel to reach the root. This was the true face of the Holy Grail War. Under this purpose, the function of fulfilling any wish was just incidental. Therefore, before the souls of the 6 servants were stored in the small Holy Grail, this Holy Grail, made by Einsteinberg, did not have the power to fulfill wishes and open the path to the root. As if falling into a bad memory, Archer's face became ugly. Although I don't know if the same thing happened in this world, I still have to say that the Holy Grail is likely to have been contaminated. Chapter 767. Contamination. For a moment, Noah and Rin and Osaka almost didn't react to Archer's words, especially Rin and Osaka, who was completely stunned. Noah still had some knowledge about the Holy Grail War from Gaia and Aleia, so he knew the true nature and purpose of the Holy Grail War. Rin and Osaka, on the other hand, didn't know anything about the Holy Grail War. Every 60 years, the Great Holy Grail in Fuyuki City would accumulate enough magic power to start the ritual. Until now, the Holy Grail War had been held for more than 5 times. That was to say, this Holy Grail War was the 5th Holy Grail War. Before this, the previous 4 Holy Grail Wars had all failed due to all kinds of problems. In the end, no one obtained the Holy Grail. Among them, the 4th Holy Grail War happened 10 years ago. Originally, after the Holy Grail War ceremony, if one wanted to perform another ceremony, they would have to wait for about 60 years to accumulate mana. However, because the 4th Holy Grail War did not reach the point where the magic accumulated in the Great Holy Grail could be completely used up, it only took 10 years for the Holy Grail War to accumulate enough magic power to start the Holy Grail War ahead of time. Just 10 years ago, the previous head of the Enosaka family, Rin Enosaka's father, participated in the Holy Grail War. In the end, he died in a hurry, so Rin Enosaka didn't have a proper understanding of the Holy Grail War. Rin Enosaka only knew the basics of the Holy Grail War from the church's overseer. Rin Osaka thought that the principle behind the Holy Grail War that Archer mentioned was that the 7 masters and the 7 servants had to decide a winner before the Holy Grail would descend. Rin Enosaka didn't know that the so-called Holy Grail was already prepared by the barons. The only thing that was lacking was the power and ability to activate the Holy Grail, which was the souls of the 6 servants. Only after the souls of the 6 servants were filled, the Holy Grail would be truly formed. Rin Enosaka didn't know any of this. Seeing Rin Enosaka's confused look, Archer wanted to explain, but his body was suddenly filled with mist, making his body gradually become illusory. "Archer!" Rin Enosaka exclaimed. "It seems that we don't have much time for a clear explanation." Archer clenched his teeth as he clutched his pierced heart and looked at Noah. "Let's not talk about Ling for now. You seem to have some understanding of the true workings of the Holy Grail War, so I'll just say it directly. Just like the word said, the Holy Grail may have been contaminated. At least, that was the case in the Holy Grail War that I participated in when I was alive." "Why?" Noah did not waste any time and asked directly. "Why was the Holy Grail contaminated? That happened during the 3rd Holy Grail War." Archer tried his best to explain what he knew in the most concise way. In the Holy Grail War, the House of Baron, who was not good at combat magic, used a foreign classic as a catalyst to summon an 8th servant, Avenger, which was different from the 7 classes of the Holy Grail War. The 8th rank servant? Noah frowned deeply. Avenger? Avenger? Rin Enosaka subconsciously clenched his hands because of this ominous rank. There is no doubt that it is an ominous rank. Archer smiled helplessly. That servant is not a hero, but the absolute evil of this world, the sum of all the evil in the world, the most ancient evil, and so on. Instead of saying that it is a heroic spirit, it is better to say that it is a body of consciousness formed by the concept itself. If Gaia is the consciousness of the planet, and Aleia is the consciousness of mankind, then it is the consciousness of all the evil in this world. The same as the suppression? Rin Enosaka was completely stunned. Even Noah's face sank. He was secretly shocked. There was such a thing in the Holy Grail War? Why didn't Gaia and Aleia mention it all? Don't be so surprised. They just exist in the same form. The combination of all the evil in the world is a kind of curse. Although ordinary curses are not on the same level as it, they can't really be compared to the 2 great restraints. Archer laughed. If that world's evil can really be on par with the restraining power, let alone a Holy Grail whose authenticity is unknown, even if all the Holy Grail, including the real one, were added together, it would still be impossible to summon the existence of the restraining power. Hearing this, Noah and Rin Enosaka both sighed in relief. If there really was an existence on the same level as the suppression force, then let alone Rin and Naka, even Noah wouldn't dare to say that he could deal with it at full power. Curse, pollution. Noah, who had calmed down, suddenly thought of something. Could it be Did you notice it? Archer looked at Noah and bitterly smiled. That's right. Although he was known as the evil of this world, he was not a hero, nor did he leave behind any great achievements in any myths or legends. Naturally, he did not have the strength that a heroic spirit should have. He was very weak and was killed not long after he was summoned. There is no need for Archer to explain the subsequent development. No could guess it. The soul of the defeated Avenger was absorbed by the Holy Grail. Because even the soul itself was absolutely evil, the Holy Grail was contaminated and became an existence that manifested the evil power. Understanding this, Noah took a deep breath. What will the polluted Holy Grail become? Archer looked at Noah and said word by word, "You're the one who's going to die. It will become a vessel full of curses. Once it is summoned, a curse that no human can withstand will flow out and curse every human until the curse covers the entire world." Although Rin and Osaka didn't understand the theory behind it, she still understood what Archer was trying to say. She took a deep breath. Even Noah could not help but be speechless. He did not expect that participating in a ritual that Gaia and Alea called entertainment would involve the life and death of all humans. Although I don't know if this world is the same, the Holy Grail War that I participated in was such an existence. Therefore, I gave up on the Holy Grail. Saying this, Archer's voice started to fade away. At this time, Noah and Rin and Osaka realized. Archer's body had almost disappeared. Archer, Rin and Osaka opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she chose to stop and closed her eyes. After a while, she opened her eyes with a gorgeous smile on her face. It doesn't matter if the Holy Grail is contaminated or not. What I have done will not change. I participated in this ceremony for the sake of victory. So, Archer, even if you leave here, I will not obediently admit defeat. I will take your share and obtain victory. Is that so? Archer suddenly smiled. His smile was very gentle. Then you are really reliable. Leaving behind these words, Archer's increasingly illusory body finally began to slowly dissipate. In the end, he completely disappeared from the spot. Archer, leave. Rin and Osaka stared at the spot where her servant disappeared. She did not speak for a long time. Noah turned around and looked at Ludong Temple behind the mountain gate above the stone stairs. He then raised his head and looked at the sky. Rin and Osaka might not have heard it, but Noah did hear it. When Archer returned to the Seat of Heroes, a sentence entered Noah's ears. If you want a final answer, then go to the church. This was the last sentence that Archer left behind. At that moment, Noah's eyes flashed with a thoughtful light. The church. Chapter 768. Bang! As soon as he returned home, Rin and Osaka seemed to have completely lost his strength. He fell on the sofa, and even his head was buried in the sofa. It was as if he could no longer move. Only a weak breathing sound could be heard. Noah, who came back with Rin and Osaka, glanced at Rin and Osaka, but didn't say anything. Although he wasn't as good as Rin and Osaka, after tonight's battle, Noah also needed to think more about the future situation. After all, in just one night, 2 masters and 3 servants had already withdrawn from the Holy Grail War. Although Rin and Osaka didn't announce his withdrawal, he couldn't fight anymore after losing his servant. Unless he signed a contract with another servant, he could only be a spectator until the end of the Holy Grail War. Furthermore, because he still had the command seal, in order to prevent Rin and Osaka from returning, there might be other masters who would come to assassinate Rin and Osaka and kill the heir of the Osaka family. That might happen. Therefore, compared to Noah, Rin and Osaka must have more worries. As for Noah, he needed to carefully consider the 2 pieces of information left by Archer before he left. One was that the Holy Grail was likely to be contaminated. The other was the whereabouts of Lancer, who killed Archer. Excluding Rin and Osaka, there were a total of 4 groups of masters and servants. The masters that left were Gomu, Soichiro, and Castor. The servants that left were Archer, Castor, and Assassin. The remaining servants, in addition to Saber and Rider, were Lancer and Berserker. Berserker's master was determined to be Ilya, and Saber's master was Tamahira. Therefore, in the entire Holy Grail War, only Lancer's master hadn't appeared yet. In addition, there was also the person who killed Gomu Soichiro. Just who was that guy? This was also a problem. What are you going to do? Noah said as if nothing had happened. You're no longer a master. There's no need for you to participate in the war. For your own safety, it's better to seek refuge in the church. Don't even think about it. Rin Inosaka finally reacted. He lifted his head from the sofa and met Noah's gaze with a strong will. I've said it before. Even if Archer leaves, I won't admit defeat. Is that so? Noah smirked. In other words, you're going to find another servant who's alone to contract? Me too. Rin Inosaka finally had a bitter expression on his face. However, among the remaining servants, the Berserker is someone that cannot be negotiated with. It is impossible for him to choose to betray Iliosphere and sign a contract with me. Lancer is also the main culprit behind the destruction of Archer. Furthermore, his master has yet to appear, so I don't know if Lancer and his master are compatible. There is too little information, so he is basically not a contract target. Originally, signing a contract with Saber would be ideal. I lack a servant, and her master is unconscious and unable to fight. If we want to win, then the best choice is to sign a contract with her. Rin Inosaka sighed. However, I don't think that a knight like Saber would abandon her master and sign a contract with someone else. It's no different from betrayal, so Saber would definitely not do it. Rin Inosaka glanced at Noah. Or, do you want me to target your rider? I have no objections. Noah shrugged. As long as you can do it. After hearing Noah's words, Rin Inosaka stared at him and did not say anything else. Being stared at by Rin Inosaka like this, Noah raised an eyebrow. You should be a smart person, so don't ask me why I didn't kill you to prevent another master from coming back. If you do, I'll probably have to reevaluate you. In the face of Gomu Soichiro, who had lost his ability to resist, Noah said that he didn't have any hobby of killing people. If Rin Inosaka asked this question again, then Noah would have to reevaluate Rin Inosaka's intelligence. Then, I'll change the question. Rin Inosaka said calmly without any emotion. Is our partnership still going to continue? It was no wonder that Rin Inosaka would ask such a question. After all, cooperation was based on the fact that both sides had their own value. Now that Rin Inosaka had lost his servant, he had no way to compete with other masters. Under such circumstances, Rin Inosaka naturally lost the value of continuing to cooperate with him. In response, Noah asked back, Our partnership was originally to deal with Berserker. You were responsible for stalling for time, and I was responsible for using the time you bought to kill Berserker. Now that you don't have a servant, if you go up against Berserker, will you run away because of this? How is that possible? Rin Inosaka answered without hesitation. Didn't I say that even without Archer, I won't admit defeat? Then isn't it fine? Noah said in an indifferent tone. The division of labor between us hasn't changed. If we need to deal with Berserker, you'll still be in charge. As long as you can buy time, everything else has nothing to do with me. Rin Inosaka went silent. After a long time, Sui-kun raised her head, and a beautiful smile slowly appeared on the face of the popular idol of Sui-kun Academy. You're really gentle. Noah frowned and protested. Why did you come to such a conclusion? Rin Inosaka ignored Noah's words. With a mischievous smile, he buried his head back into the sofa. He no longer looked as powerless as he did before. At this time, a shadow flew in from a window and landed on the floor of Rin Inosaka's living room with a loud clang. Rin Inosaka quickly raised his head again. When he saw who it was, his spirit was lifted. Saber. It was Saber who went to chase after the mysterious person who killed Gomu Soichiro. How is it? Noah stepped forward and looked at Saber. Did you catch up? Saber glanced at Noah and Rin Inbin. After a while, she shook her head. Not only did I not catch up, I didn't even see what the person looked like. I'm very sorry. Even Saber didn't catch up? Rin in Osaka was shocked. Does that mean that person is a servant? I'm not sure. Saber met Noah and Rin in Osaka's gaze. But I can feel a very strange magic. It doesn't seem like a human's magic. Doesn't seem like a human's magic. Rin in Osaka rubbed his chin. Since it's Saber's feeling, it shouldn't be wrong. The person used a gun to kill Jimmy-sensei. Could it be a Lancer? No. Noah denied Rin in Osaka's guess. Lancer's gun is a red magic gun. That gun is obviously too luxurious. It's definitely not Lancer's gun. Rin in Osaka and Saber looked at each other. If it wasn't Lancer, then who could it be? Berserker. Impossible. That guy had gone berserk. He didn't know how to speak or retreat. He only knew how to charge and didn't use a gun. It couldn't be him. If it wasn't Lancer, then who could it be? When Rin in Osaka and Saber fell into silence, Noah came to the window and looked at the night sky. He recalled Archer's last words. Thus, Noah suddenly spoke. In Osaka, what kind of place is the church in Fuyuki? Chapter 769. The Church. Noah's words startled Rin Inbin, and he couldn't help but ask curiously, "Why are you asking about this?" "I'm a little concerned." Noah waved his hand perfunctorily. "Also, as a master, I have never been to the church and have only seen the supervisor of this year's Holy Grail War. I don't know much about the church, but you seem to know a lot about it. So, tell me more." "Undoubtedly, you didn't go the last time I asked you to, and now you're bringing this up again. How suspicious." Rin Inbin stared at Noah for a while before continuing. "If you want to ask about the supervisor of this year's Holy Grail War, although it wasn't my intention, I do know a lot about him. After all, he's my guardian." "Guardian?" Noah was surprised. "The supervisor of the church is your guardian?" "I know it's strange, but the relationship between them is also very complicated," Rin Inbin said in a somewhat emotionless tone. "That fake priest is indeed the supervisor of the Holy Grail War, but he's also related to the association that we magicians belong to." Rin Inbin paused for a while, as if he was organizing his memories. After a while, he explained to Noah. "The current supervisor of the church used to be a member of the Holy Church. Later, he was sent to the Magic Association and became my father's disciple. My father was in charge of teaching him magic knowledge and abilities. After my father passed away, he replaced my father and became my guardian because I couldn't be independent at that time. There's such a relationship." Noah scratched his cheek. "In other words, other than the supervisor of the Holy Church, he's also a member of the Magic Association, and he's also your senior's guardian? That's why I said he's a fake priest." Rin Inbin obviously didn't have a good impression of his senior. Even his tone became a little harsh. "Undoubtedly, the relationship between the Holy Church and the Magic Association is so bad, but that person was able to gain a foothold in both organizations and even became my father's disciple. However, thanks to this, after my father passed away, my magic was basically taught by him. In this aspect, I'll admit his value." "Is that so?" Noah nodded thoughtfully. "What's the priest's name?" "Yin Feng Qili." Rin in Osaka said the name directly. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and clapped his hands. "That's right, that fake priest also participated in the last Holy Grail War as master." This sentence made Noah's heart skip a beat. The church's supervisor, that priest Yin Feng Qili, also participated in the Holy Grail War. That means he was already a master? At this moment, Noah finally remembered. On the second night after summoning Ryder, he seemed to have met Lancer outside the church, right? The more he thought about it, the more Noah felt that something was wrong. The more he thought about it, the more Noah was worried. In addition to the information left behind by Archer before he disappeared, Noah couldn't sit still anymore and immediately walked towards the door. "Noah." Rin Inbin froze for a moment. "Where are you going?" Saber, who had been quietly listening to the conversation like a loyal guard, also asked in surprise. "There are some things I care about." Noah didn't even turn his head and directly walked out of the hall. "I'm going to the church. You guys can rest first. Don't wait for me." After saying this, Noah's figure disappeared from Rin Inbin and Saber's sight. "Aren't you going to follow him?" Saber asked Rin Inbin. Maybe Noah found something. Even so, I don't have a servant anymore. Even if I follow him, I'll just be a burden. Rin Inbin stared blankly at the door and then turned to look at Saber. To prevent this from happening again, Saber, I need your help. Saber understood the meaning behind Rin Inbin's words. You want me to form a contract with you and become your servant? Saber looked directly at Rin Inbin. Rin, you should know that my master is still unconscious. Do you want me to give up on her and form a contract with you while she's unconscious? Although Saber didn't directly reject him, Rin Inbin already understood what Saber meant. It was obvious that Saber wouldn't form a contract with Rin Inbin under such circumstances. That would be no different from betrayal. I knew you would say that. Rin Inbin wasn't upset at all. Instead, he smiled. But, Saber, we don't know when Sakura will wake up. If she continues to sleep like this, what are you going to do? If my master can't fight, then I, as the sword, will do, Saber replied without hesitation. Plus, I should be the one fighting. Sakura is someone I have to protect. It's fine even if I don't fight. But if you don't have a master, you'll be troubled too, right? Rin Inbin said. Do you want to fight alone until the end and obtain the Holy Grail yourself? Saber frowned when she heard this. Why did it sound like Saber was going to monopolize the Holy Grail? I know you're strong, but it's not good to fight alone. Rin Inbin finally made this suggestion. Coincidentally, I don't have a servant, and your master can't move. So, why don't we form a team? A team. Saber seemed to understand Rin Inbin's intention. I don't have any desire for the Holy Grail. I just want to obtain the final victory, Rin Inbin said firmly. So, even if we don't have a contract, we can just form a team. I'll be your master, and you'll be my servant. Before Sakura wakes up, how about we maintain this relationship? Relationship, not contract, right? Saber finally understood. In other words, we're master and servant in name, right? That's right. Rin Inosaka smiled. How about it? Is this acceptable? Saber closed her eyes and fell in a deep thought. Rin Inbin didn't rush her. He just sat there and waited for Saber's answer. After a long time, Saber finally opened her eyes and nodded. I understand, Rin. Before Sakura wakes up, we'll form a team and fight together. Hearing this, Rin Inosaka smiled in satisfaction. Nighttime. After leaving Inbin's house, Noah went straight to the church. Inbin's house was quite far from the church. In addition, it was the middle of the night. Noah walked in the dark towards the church. He didn't seem to be in a hurry. It was as if he was out for a walk. It looked like he was taking a leisurely walk, but in reality, it was quite fast. As the night deepened, Noah climbed up a steep slope and finally arrived at the entrance of the church from a few days ago. Looking at the dark night, the church seemed to have opened its bloody mouth and was ready to swallow any intruders alive. This time, Noah didn't just stand at the entrance. Instead, he pushed open the iron fence and walked in. Outside the church's chapel was a courtyard that looked a little shabby. Noah crossed the courtyard and came to the chapel. He reached out his hand and pushed the door open. Gotcha! With a slight but clear sound of the door opening, the full view of the church appeared in front of Noah's eyes. It was just an ordinary church. Long benches were lined up in an orderly manner. Silver moonlight shone through the windows. Wisps of fog-like smoke rose from the candles placed on the table at the front of the hall. Wisps of cold air lingered in the air. In this church, the back of a tall man wearing a priest's outfit appeared in Noah's vision. Looking at the priest, Noah slowly narrowed his eyes. Chapter 770. In the middle of the night, the chapel did not have the slightest hint of holiness. Instead, it gave off a sinister vibe. In such a sinister chapel, at the very front, the priest holding a book did not seem to notice Noah's arrival at all. His head was still lowered, as if he was silently reciting the scriptures of the Bible. At least, he looked quite pious. However, in this sinister chapel, the scene of a tall priest silently reciting scriptures was very strange no matter how one looked at it. If it was a timid person who saw this scene, they would definitely subconsciously have the idea of turning around and leaving, right? Not only did Noah not turn around and leave, but he pushed open the door and walked into the chapel without any disguise. Every step he took caused a clear sound of footsteps. He was upright, without the slightest bit of sneakiness. This made the chapel seem a little livelier. However, Noah did not directly walk towards the priest. Instead, after walking for a short distance, he stopped and did not make any further movements. An indescribable silence filled the chapel. The believers and visitors did not immediately make a sound. They only maintained the scene in front of them, causing the atmosphere to become quite strange. Although this was the first time they had met, and there was no obvious hostility between them, the scene in front of them gave people the feeling that a confrontation had already been going on in the dark, with swords drawn and bows drawn, and was extremely tense. Whoever broke the silence first would be the one at a disadvantage. It was just this kind of atmosphere. After an unknown amount of time had passed, the first round of confrontation ended with the priests admitting defeat. The sacred chapel will never reject any visitors. A low and gloomy voice came from the priest's body. However, you don't seem to have any reason to visit at this time, do you, Rider's master? The moment the voice fell, the priest put down the Bible in his hand, turned around, and met Noah's gaze. The supervisor of the Holy Grail War, Yin Fengili. At this moment, the man called a fake priest by Rin Inbin looked at Noah with a pair of unfriendly eyes. It was as if he was looking at something unimportant. A smile appeared on his face, as if he had seen through everything. Most of the masters who come here are either here for help or for protection. Rider's master, what is your purpose for coming here? To the point. There was not the slightest hint of beating around the bush. The priest named Yin Fengili went straight to the point. He did not seem like a clergyman at all, which made people feel a sense of disgust. At this moment, Noah did not want to be outdone. He pursed his lips and smiled and spoke without reservation. I have something to confirm, so I came here. Is that so? Yin Feng Chili put his hands behind his back and closed his eyes. Instead of calling him a priest, it would be better to call him an important member of the battle. It is my duty as a supervisor to help Master resolve his doubts regarding the Holy Grail War. I can't refuse your request. He made it sound as if he could not refuse because of his job and not because he wanted to help Noah resolve his doubts. Yin Fengili said, "Then, what do you want to confirm?" What I want to confirm is very simple. Noah stared at Yin Fengili and shrugged. Excuse me, Father, as long as one has the aptitude for magic, anyone can become a master, right? There is a misunderstanding in your question, Yin Fengili said calmly. It should be said that as long as one has the aptitude for magic, anyone can be chosen by the Holy Grail and become a master. Indeed, Noah nodded slowly. Then, does that include supervisors who know how to use magic? Yin Fengili opened his eyes and looked at Noah's half-smile. He actually smiled as well. Unfortunately, no matter which Holy Grail War it was, there was no precedent of a supervisor being chosen by the Holy Grail, including this one. There is also a misunderstanding in your answer. Noah's eyes flashed. Not being chosen is one thing, and not being able to become a master is another. Depriving a master of his command incantation and robbing the master of his identity and rights. There should be many precedents in the Holy Grail Wars of the past, right? The whole place suddenly fell silent. The smile on Yin Fengili's face disappeared little by little. His resolute face was expressionless as he looked straight at Noah. What are you trying to say? I don't think you are an idiot, Father. Noah crossed his arms, and there was some pressure in his eyes. As one of the masters of the previous Holy Grail War, and the supervisor of this Holy Grail War, I don't think you are so ignorant of the rules of the Holy Grail War. In short, what you want to say is, did I steal the command incantation from another master and intervene in this Holy Grail War and break the rules? Yin Fengili said calmly. Since you said so, it means that you have evidence to prove the truth of this matter, right? How could that be? Noah spread his hands helplessly. If I had solid evidence, then I wouldn't have come here alone to confirm it. I would have prepared for Saber and Ryder to attack this place together. Then I would have let Rindo Saka see what kind of person her supervisor is. Oh, Yin Fengili suddenly smiled. In other words, you came here to question me without any preparation? That's right, Noah admitted generously and even kindly gave a suggestion. So, if there's a supervisor who wants to break the rules and intervene in the Holy Grail War and wants to take me down, now is the best time to do so. You don't have to provoke me, Master of Writer, Yin Fengili said expressionlessly as if he was facing a child who liked to play pranks. No matter what, I have no intention of killing you here. If this is your purpose, then please leave. After he finished speaking, Yin Fengili turned around and was about to pick up the Bible that he put on the table. However, his body suddenly froze, and he suddenly turned around. Whoosh! At the same time, a fist carrying the whistling sound of the wind suddenly came from behind Yin Fengili and directly landed in the air. Yin Fengqi turned his body and dodged the punch. He clicked his tongue and looked at Noah, who had appeared in front of him at some point and was still in a punching posture. You actually attacked the supervisor. Are you not normal? Master of Writer. You're wrong. It's because I'm too normal that I'm so easily affected by my emotions. Noah retracted his fist and turned around to look at Yin Fengili with a cold smile. You're right. I don't have any evidence to prove that you've broken the rules, and I'm not even sure that you're Master of Lancer. However, unfortunately, I don't have a good impression of priests. The priests that I've met in the past were either man-killer ghosts or crazy people. For someone like you who doesn't look like a priest at all and is full of evil energy, I think that using this method would be the easiest way to confirm what I want to confirm. After he finished speaking, Noah seemed to be mocking himself for letting his emotions affect his decisions, and a manic aura surged from his entire body. Within that aura, there was a trace of murderous intent. If you don't want to die, then struggle as much as you can. However, Noah's direct attack was like peeling off a corner of the mask that no one could see on Yin Fengili's face. A sinister smile appeared on Yin Fengili's resolute face. I see. As expected of the master who can go head-to-head with a servant. You're full of confidence in your own conjectures. Then, there's no need to beat around the bush. You have the demeanor of a magician, Noah Doria. Have you gathered sufficient information about me? Noah extended a palm in Yin Fengili's direction. In that case, let me see what you're capable of. The moment he finished speaking, a beautiful magical formation appeared in front of Noah's palm. Light illuminated the church. Chapter 771. OM. In the dark night, inside the church that was rippling with an ominous aura, a strong light suddenly shone through the window and the crack of the door. It was as if something had soared up, illuminating the entire church. Boom! Immediately afterward, accompanied by a heavy explosion, with the church's door as the center, the wall in front of the building burst open, and a huge beam of light shot out from the inside, directly passing through the courtyard in front of the church. After blasting the iron fence, it rubbed against the ground and shot into the distance. Under the attack of this huge beam of light, a figure seemed to be abruptly pushed out, flew upside down, and fell heavily on the ground. After making a muffled groan, he turned over and kneeled on one knee, awkwardly rubbing against the ground for some distance before stopping. A trace of light smoke rose from his body, making Yin Fengqi kneeling on one knee on the ground. The priest's attire on his body looked like it was on fire, and there were traces of scorch everywhere. However, Yin Fengqi didn't care about his own embarrassment. His eyes were fixed on the front. Duh, 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 duh. Under the gaze of Yin Fengqi, the wall in front of him was directly destroyed without leaving a trace, and inside the church, a figure slowly walked out with clear footsteps. Around Noah's body, as if there were cannons floating around him, a precise geometric pattern moved along with Noah's movement. Surrounding Noah's body, there was a burst of amazing magic power, making the whole space filled with an oppressive atmosphere. Looking at Yin Fengqi, who was kneeling on one knee on the ground and staring at him, Noah raised his eyebrows. You're really worthy of being able to stand firmly in both the Magic Association and the Holy Church at the same time. That attack just now almost forced Castor to leave the stage. Even after taking that attack, you didn't suffer any obvious damage. You're quite capable. After saying such a sentence, Noah raised his hand again. As if he was giving orders, he waved his hand gently. OM. An intricate geometrical pattern in the space around Noah suddenly trembled, and the astonishing magic power that lingered within suddenly converged. Yin Feng Chi Li, who had already seen Noah's magic cannon once, suddenly jumped up and rolled to the side without caring about his image. The next moment, a beam of light made of magic power burst out from the magic array, crossing the space, carrying a dazzling light and a strong impact, and fell on the position where Yin Feng Chi Li was a second ago. Bang! An amazing big explosion was stirred up from the courtyard in front of the church, bringing terrible wind and fire in all directions. Although Yin Feng Chi Li escaped the direct attack, he was still affected by the wind and fire. His whole body was like it was hit by something heavy. He once again hit the ground and rolled uncontrollably. However, this time, Yin Feng Chi Li did not choose to adjust his posture. Instead, he simply took advantage of the wind and rolled on the ground. He stomped on the ground with one foot, making his whole body spin like a top. With a turn, he rushed to Noah's side. "Huh!" With a loud shout, Yin Feng Chi Li clenched his hands into fists. His fists were like iron hammers, following his spinning body in an arc, and punched directly in Noah's direction. However, almost at the same time, Noah raised a fist with a cold smile and pulled it behind him. In the vibration of the air, his whole fist was covered by a golden vortex of air, bringing with it an ear-piercing whistling sound as it met Yin Feng Chi Li's fist. Bang! With a heavy muffled sound, the strength chi caused by the collision of the two fists spread out like ripples. Noah's body trembled slightly. Then, he dispelled the force of Yin Feng's punch that was aimed at him. However, Yin Feng Chi Li was sent flying by the terrifying impact of Noah's annihilation strike. Amidst the chaotic sounds of footsteps, he finally managed to stabilize himself with great difficulty. After a brief exchange of blows, Noah was clear about the situation. Regardless of Yin Feng Chi Li's ability in magic, in close combat, his fist technique was probably not inferior to Gummu Zangakuro's. The difference was that Gummu Zangakuro's fist technique was born for surprise attacks, and was too strange and unpredictable. Yin Feng Chi Li's fist technique was rather orthodox, and did not have any obvious weaknesses. Unfortunately, if that's the case, then he can only struggle. As soon as he finished speaking, the magic formations around Noah lit up one after another, gathering a strong magical power. Seeing this, Yin Feng Chi Li's body tensed up, and his expression was grave. Only those who had actually faced Noah knew how difficult it was to deal with Noah, who had turned into a mobile cannon. When dealing with the servants, because most of the servants basically had magical skills, Noah's magic cannon didn't play any role at all. It could only be reduced to a decoration. When he first faced Castor, Noah's magic cannon almost sent the opponent back to the seat of heroes. It was enough to show how powerful this magic was because of Noah. Otherwise, later, Castor wouldn't specifically guard against Noah's magic. Now, the opponent was not a servant with magical skills or a magician from the god generation. Noah's magic cannon finally showed its true power. OM! The moment the familiar trembling sound sounded, a magical beam with a strong light and a terrible impact swept out and blasted in the direction of Yin Feng Chi Li. Bang! There was another huge explosion. The magic beam that landed on the ground stirred up a gust of wind that shook the surroundings. Once again, Yin Feng and Chi Li, who had leaped out of the way at the last moment, were blown away. They rolled on the ground for the umpteenth time. OM! Yin Feng Chi Li, who was still rolling on the ground, didn't have time to get up. The trembling sound that made people's hearts shrink fiercely finally made Yin Feng Chi Li's pupils finally shrank to the size of a needle tip. If this continues, Yin Feng Qi Li will only be forced to a dead end by the continuous bombardment of the magic cannon. Yin Feng Qi Li, who understood his situation, could only click his tongue. He put his hand into his arms and pulled out several red tools that looked like daggers. Between his 5 fingers, he tightened his grip, and from the tip of the handle, a sharp blade popped out. Immediately, Yin Feng Qi Li fiercely rolled. His figure jumped up, and with a swing of his hand, the weapons in his hand were like arrows cutting through the air and directly shot in the direction of Noah. Seeing this, Noah was slightly surprised, but he didn't have the slightest hesitation. His body tensed up, and a dense magical energy immediately emerged from his body. In the end, it lingered around Noah's body, causing waves of magical aura to shake off from Noah's body. The numerous sharp weapons that turned into arrows quickly flashed over and viciously shot towards Noah's throat, heart, limbs, abdomen, and head, respectively. The attack of every weapon was aimed at the goal of killing. However, when the weapons with the cold white tips on their blades violently shot over and landed on the magical aura that lingered around Noah's body, it seemed to have encountered a major obstacle. Even if they penetrated the magical aura, the speed of the shooting became slower and slower. In just a short while, the sharp weapons that were shot out seemed to have lost their strength in a swamp. Before they could even touch Noah's body, they slowed down one after another and fell to the ground with crisp sounds. Without giving Yin Feng Qi Li any chance to react, a magical array around Noah rotated, and a burst of dazzling magical light burst out, causing the magical light to turn into a beam of light. Following a straight trajectory, it violently landed in the direction of Yin Feng Qi Li amidst the vibrations in the air. The violent impact and flames were set off. This time, Yin Feng Qi Li was hit directly because he dodged too hastily. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body flew out. After rubbing against the ground for more than 10 meters, he slowly came to a stop. Is this the end? Amidst Noah's sarcastic voice, the fatal magical light beam fell. The sound of the explosion resounded throughout the night sky of the church. Chapter 772. Boom! When a gigantic magic light beam suddenly landed in the courtyard in front of the church, setting off stormy waves of impact and dense flames that soared into the sky, completely covering Yin Feng and Qi Li's bodies. Noah's expression did not show the slightest bit of happiness. Instead, it darkened slightly. After being bombarded by Noah's magic cannon several times, there was basically no place in the courtyard in front of the church that was unscathed. There were either deep holes in the ground, or the stone bricks on the surface had been blown off, leaving only a layer of black soil. It was as though the ground had been charred by a fire, and traces of smoke were everywhere. In such a messy place, the shock waves and intense flames that had just been stirred up began to slowly dissipate. Not long after, a figure appeared in the center of the flames. However, it was not Yin Feng Qi Li's figure. At this moment, Yin Feng Qi Li was still lying on the ground with blood at the corner of his mouth. He had been protected by the person who had suddenly appeared and escaped the disaster. Noah had more or less expected this outcome. Regardless of whether it was the conclusion made by his own speculation or the fact that a figure had suddenly barged into the area covered by Noah's sensing ability after the magic cannon fired and protected Yin Feng and Qi Li, the result was obvious. Hence, Noah laughed coldly. "You're finally willing to appear? Lancer's servant?" The newcomer was none other than Lancer. Holding the familiar crimson magic spear, Lancer first glanced at Yin Feng Qi Li, who was lying on the ground behind him, clutching his chest and continuously coughing out blood. Then, he turned his gaze back to Noah with a helpless expression on his face. He's still attacked. This sentence indicated that Lancer had actually been observing the situation from the side. However, Lancer did not seem to have any intention of interfering in the beginning. He did not even enter the area covered by Noah's sensing ability, so Noah did not discover him. Now, Lancer's appearance had confirmed Noah's speculation. There was no doubt that Yin Feng Qili was Lancer's master. In other words, as the supervisor of the Holy Grail War, Yin Feng Qili really interfered in the Holy Grail War and made an example of violating the rules like Castor. Yin Feng Qili clutched his chest and struggled to get up. He didn't look at Lancer in front of him and stared straight at Noah, who was opposite him. His face was a little pale because of his serious injury. I didn't expect that you were really going to kill me. Didn't you think about what would happen to you if I didn't violate the rules? What? Will someone avenge you? Or will the Holy Grail give me a punishment? Don't tell me you're trying to say that you've offended the Magic Association and the Holy Church. Noah said sarcastically. I'm sorry, but no matter what the consequences are, I'm not afraid of anything. Oh, Yin Feng Qili tried to straighten his back and also sneered. Originally, because you didn't have any hostility to the rest of the masters, and you even saved Tong Ying and didn't do anything to Ling who lost his servant, I thought you were just a naive boy. I didn't expect that even if there was the possibility of being wronged by you, you would not hesitate to kill me. I admit that my evaluation of you is too one-sided. No, your evaluation is basically correct. I don't have any desire for the Holy Grail, and I don't participate in this ceremony with some kind of mission like Yuansika. So, I'll turn a blind eye to the other masters if I find them pleasing to the eye. If I don't find them pleasing to the eye, I'll teach them a lesson or even kill them. I won't be hostile to the other masters just because of this ceremony, Noah said with a smile that wasn't a smile. You are the same. Hearing this, Yin Feng Qili narrowed his eyes. In other words, what caused you to be hostile towards me? Well, it's okay if you interpret it that way. Noah pursed his lips. Who asked you to have the exact same feeling as the two murderers and psychopathic priests I met? In fact, the moment he entered the church and saw Yin Feng Qili, Noah's impression of Yin Feng Qili dropped to the lowest. There was no other reason than the feeling Yin Feng Qili gave Noah was too similar to when Bingyong Li and Freed that he met before. Although it was just a feeling, the more Noah talked with Yin Fengqi and Qi Li, the more he felt that Yin Fengqi and Qi Li were the same as when Bingyong Li and Freed. They were a group of people with completely flawed values. They were definitely not good people. That was why Noah chose to make a move in such a domineering manner. Reality proved that Noah's feeling was right. Yin Feng Qili was indeed not a good person. How do you feel? Yin Feng Qili closed his eyes and said such a sentence. I thought that if this continues, when I reveal my true identity, it should be at the end of the Holy Grail War. But now I've been exposed ahead of time. I thought that when I reveal my identity, it must be in front of Ling. That way, Ling's expression will be very interesting. Hearing Yin Feng Qili's words, Noah also had a deep question in his heart. He remembered that when he first fought with Castor, Castor said that because Lancer's master wanted a little girl, he sent Lancer to cooperate with Castor. So far, there was only one person who would be called a little girl by Castor. At that moment, Noah asked, Are you thinking about Nagasaka? Idea. Yin Feng Qili smiled, and his smile was unusually happy. If it's because I want to see what kind of interesting reaction Ling will have when he learns the truth, then I am indeed thinking about it. Yin Feng Qili's smile directly made Noah's mood become very bad. The truth. It doesn't matter if I tell you. Yin Feng Qili's mouth evoked an unpleasant arc. I just want to know what kind of expression Ling will have when she learns that her father died in my hands. Hearing this sentence, Noah was shocked. You killed Nagasaka's father? I can't help it. He is my teacher. Yin Feng Qili laughed more and more unscrupulously. As a disciple who needs to follow behind the mentor, that man's back has been exposed to me too many times. I can't help but want to go forward and stab him with a knife. As a result, I couldn't help but become like this. In the last Holy Grail War, Ling, Nagasaka's father, as the head of the Nagasaka family, attended the ceremony as one of the masters, but he died very suddenly. Noah also knew about this matter. So that's how it is. Noah looked at Yin Feng Qili's eyes became cold. Was it because you plotted against him that Nagasaka's father died so suddenly? What? You don't have any reason to be angry, do you? Or rather, you should be happy. Yin Feng Chili opened his hands, as if he was going to promote some theory, and spat out a calm and slightly deranged voice. After all, it was that man who sent one of his daughters into Jiantong's family and almost fed her to the worms. Don't you love that child of the Jiantong family very much? You should be satisfied with this result, right? What a disgusting guy. As expected, no priest is a good person. I can completely confirm this matter. Looking at the joyful smile on Yin Feng Chili's face, Noah's expression gradually calmed down. Forget it. Since my question has been answered, you should obediently leave the stage. With that, Noah lifted his feet and slowly walked in the direction of Yin Feng Chili. Seeing this, Yin Feng Chili did not say a word. He immediately turned around, clutched his chest, and ran out of the church. Noah watched as Yin Feng and Chili left. Just as he was about to chase after them, a careless voice rang in his ears, causing him to stop in his tracks. Hey, don't chase after him. How about you play with me here? Chapter 773. Hey, don't chase after him. How about you stay here and play with me? Noah stopped in his tracks and looked at Yin Fengili, who was gradually running away. He clicked his tongue and looked at Lancer with a sharp gaze. What are you doing? Lancer asked in a relaxed and carefree voice. What are you doing? Huh? Lancer, who had endured Noah's sharp gaze, did not retreat at all. Instead, he spoke excitedly. Not bad. There are people in this era with such eyes. It really makes one's blood boil. Seeing Lancer's eyes, an expression filled with a strong desire to fight, Noah roughly understood what kind of person Lancer was. Battle maniac? I hate this kind of person the most. Noah looked straight at Lancer and declared, Are you going to stop me no matter what? Lancer? I'm sorry, kid. Lancer held the magic spear in his hand tightly and shrugged helplessly. Even if he's that kind of person, he's still my master. Without him, I can't continue to exist. So, it's better if you stay here and accompany me. Is that so? Noah closed his eyes slightly and then suddenly opened them. Then let me prepare a worthy opponent for you. After saying this, Noah raised one hand and turned the back of his hand towards Lancer. Lancer was shocked. Don't tell me you're planning to. Without giving Lancer a chance to react, Noah raised his hand high above his head and chanted loudly. Come here, Rider. This sentence directly turned into the purest of orders and resounded under the night sky of the church. Clang! On the back of Noah's hand, the sword-shaped command incantation surrounded by two snakes suddenly lit up and brought with it a rich red light. In the blink of an eye, one of the snakes on the command incantation suddenly faded away and gradually became blurry. The command incantation, which had become indistinct, directly turned into a huge amount of magic power. It rippled and reverberated to the surroundings, causing the space around Noah to suddenly become illusory. Then, a dazzling light burst out from the illusory space. A tall and slender figure appeared in the middle of it. Ryder, who was holding a spike-like chain dagger, raised his head, though was wearing an eye patch. With his back facing Noah, he looked at Lancer opposite him, and a strong magic wave was emitted from his body. Ryder's servant, here, following the summons. As if he didn't see Lancer, Ryder turned around and looked at Noah. Master, please give me your orders. Orders? Noah smiled faintly. No orders, Ryder. This time, do as you like it. Make as much trouble as you want. Hearing this, Ryder tightened his grip on the chain dagger in a bright smile that was usually expressionless. Understood, Master. Noah crouched down like a cheetah and chased after Yin Feng and Chili as soon as he received Ryder's reply. Stop right there. Kid. Lancer naturally couldn't just watch as Noah chased after Yin Fengili. He turned around, but before he could make a move, a strong gust of wind came from behind him. His expression changed slightly, and he quickly turned his body sideways. Swoosh! In the sharp sound of the wind breaking, the spike-like dagger connected to the chain brushed past Lancer's body. Like an arrow that pierced through space, it shot out and landed in the air. However, at the same time, an aura suddenly approached Lancer and flashed behind him. Clang! The crisp sound of the collision and the bursting of sparks shook the air. That was the sound caused by the fierce collision between the red magic spear and the chain dagger. The body of the magic spear and the spike-like dagger constantly rubbed against each other, creating strong sparks. Under such circumstances, Ryder raised his head. Although his eyes were covered by a shield, when Lancer met his gaze that shouldn't have existed, he suddenly felt a chill in his heart. Then Ryder smiled. His smile was like a rose with thorns, full of danger. "Let's fight, Lancer!" Hearing this, Lancer also smiled. His smile was rather ferocious. "All right, I've been waiting for this day for a long time." Violent magic power rose from the two servants, and the tension in the air was instantly ignited. Clang! Then, the loud sound of metal clashing reverberated in the air and didn't die down for a long time. Swoosh! On the other side, Noah, who had Ryder in charge of delaying Lancer, turned into a shadow and flashed under the moonlight. Like a ghost, he rushed into a forest at his fastest speed. Within the range of Noah's sensing ability, he could still sense Yen Fengili's aura. Perhaps because he was injured, Yen Fengili couldn't escape from the range of Noah's sensing ability in time. This was also the most unlucky thing about Yen Fengili. It was destined that tonight would be the most unforgettable and unbearable night for him. Following the remnant aura within the range of his sensing ability, Noah constantly shuttled through the lush forest. His body was extremely nimble as he leaped over the trees. At a speed that could only be seen as a shadow, he sprinted in a certain direction. Swoosh! Just as Noah was about to catch up with the aura in front of him, a weapon that was as sharp as a dagger or a short sword suddenly shot out from the front. It cut through the air, and with a sharp sound, it accurately pierced towards Noah's body. It was a weapon that Yen Fengili had used once in his battle with Noah. It could eject a blade from the dagger-like hilt. It was said that under normal circumstances, only members of the Church of Holy Light would use this weapon. It was a weapon called the Black Key. In terms of swords, this weapon wasn't refined enough, and its sharpness couldn't be compared to ordinary swords. However, in terms of length, it was a weapon that was very suitable for throwing. Moreover, this weapon had a miraculous effect on spiritual bodies. The blade of the sword was weaved with magic. As long as there was a hilt, it could be carried on one's body at any time. When it was time to use it, it could be taken out. The blade of the sword weaved with magic could be used in battle. It was a very convenient and miraculous weapon. If this weapon was used against a servant, as long as it could hit, it would be able to cause damage. It was a pity that Noah wasn't a spiritual body. To Noah, Yen Fengili's Black Key was no different from ordinary daggers and short swords. Pong! Immediately, a violent and dense magic burst out from Noah's body. It was like a shock wave that blew in all directions. Dang, 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 dang. The black keys that were shooting towards Noah were directly blown away by the magic storm that burst out from Noah's body. It was as if they had landed on a steel shield, and they were all knocked away. From this, it could be seen that in terms of power, these black keys were indeed somewhat lacking. The appearance of these black keys was equivalent to telling Noah Yen Fengili was right in front of him. Along with the dense magic wave, Noah's eyes flashed with a hint of sharpness. He turned around and stomped on the trunk of a tree. His entire body turned into an arrow and shot out rapidly, flashing forward. Not long after, in the field of vision in front, a figure wearing a priest's outfit, covering his chest and fleeing in a sorry state, was imprinted in Noah's eyes. As if he had sensed the movement behind him, Yen Fengili turned around with all his might. However, there was not a single figure behind Yen Fengili. This result not only did not make Yen Fengili feel relieved at all. Instead, he was shocked. He turned around abruptly and looked in the direction that he was fleeing in. There, a figure quietly landed on the ground. Yen Fengili's face darkened. Yen Fengili's intuition told him that it was him. There was really no way for him to escape today. Escape? Noah revealed a cold smile. Do you think you can escape? Fake priest. Chapter 774. Whoosh! The mana waves that continued to rise from Noah's body were like a gust of wind that rolled up the dead branches and rotten leaves on the ground in the silent forest at night. It was as though a tornado was wantonly venting its power. It was quite a shocking sight. Even Yin Fengqi couldn't help but take a step back when he saw this scene. At this time, what filled Yin Fengqi's heart wasn't fear, but shock. Ever since he was in the church, Noah had used the mana cannons made of pure mana more than once. That kind of magic seemed simple, but because of its simplicity, its power was directly related to the amount of magic. From the power of the magic cannon, it could be seen that even if it was just a single shot, the amount of magic it required was quite shocking. However, from start to finish, Noah had used the magic cannon countless times, but it didn't seem like it was going to be used up at all. Moreover, now, he was using the most direct method to display his magic in front of him. How could Yin Fengqi not be shocked? Could it be that this person's magic was boundless? Even the heroic spirits who stood out from the legends didn't have this level of magic. How did this master, who came out of nowhere, have this level of magic power? If he had this level of magic, he shouldn't be unknown in this world. The Magic Association, which paid the most attention to magic, should have noticed, right? Magic was the root of mystery. Even the ritual of the Holy Grail was built on the foundation of the endless magical power in Fuyuki City. It was easy to imagine how important magic was. Therefore, if he had this level of magic power, he would definitely be noticed by the Magic Association. However, Yin Fengqi, who had a firm foothold in both the Holy Church and the Magic Association, didn't know of this person's existence. This made Yin Fengqi involuntarily grit his teeth and speak. "You, who are you?" "What?" Noah lifted his feet and slowly walked towards Yin Fengqi. In the end, is this the only question in your heart? From Noah's words, Yin Fengqi felt a real murderous intent. The person in front of him was indeed planning to kill Yin Feng and Qi Li. That was why he chased after them. Yin Fengqi didn't know that Noah would directly kill someone he met for the first time. That was a very rare thing. Yin Fengqi, who didn't know this, pulled out the black key with a sullen face. Clang! The sharp blade of the black key, which looked like a dagger's hilt, flashed with a cold light. Instead of retreating, Yin Fengqi Li advanced. With a shift of his feet, his figure instantly turned into a black shadow and shot toward Noah like a bolt of lightning. His sharp black key easily cut through the air with the help of magic power. Of the black keys of the black key. Facing black key's merciless attack, Noah's eyes flickered slightly. He kicked off the ground with the tip of his foot and picked up a withered branch, holding it in his hand. The complicated and precise magic patterns, which looked like electric wires, suddenly spread out from Noah's hand and climbed up the black key's black key. The magic patterns covered the entire surface of the black key. Facing the incoming sharp Yin, the withered branch in Noah's hand turned into an afterimage as it flashed out. With a frightening momentum, it heavily struck Yin's sword like an egg smashing into a rock. Clang! The rotting branches clashed with the sharp black keys, and the sound of steel clashing against steel rang out. After his attack was blocked by Noah, Yin Fengqi immediately flicked his wrist. The sharp black key was like a strange poisonous snake as it quickly circled around the rotten withered branch that was covered with a magic pattern of enhanced magic. With a turn, it cut across the surface of the withered branch and stabbed forward. Ding! Just as the sharp black key flashed past the black key that had been strengthened by the black key, a hand suddenly stretched out rapidly. With a flick of the finger, a gust of magic wind was brought up, and it accurately bounced off Yin Fengqi's black key. At the same time, Noah raised the black key in his hand and stabbed it directly at Yin Fengqi's face. The tip of the black key enlarged in his eyes. Yin Fengqi's heart tightened as he tilted his body and somersaulted in the air to dodge the black key. Immediately after, Yin Fengqi's eyes suddenly became sharp. Magic power surged from the black key, causing the sword made of magic power to tremble violently. Following the trembling of the black key, the afterimages of the black key filled the space in front of Yin Fengqi within a few breaths. This was caused by Yin Fengqi stabbing the black key in his hand at astonishing speed. As a result, the rain-like sword shadows filled Noah's entire vision. Like a downpour, they enveloped Noah's body from all directions. Faced with this scene, Noah's gaze was calm. He raised the black key in his hand and slowly drew a trajectory that was difficult to follow before he stabbed it out with extreme agility. Ding! A light sound of collision rang out. Noah's black key met the black key amidst the overwhelming sword shadows. It collided with the tip of the black key and stopped the continuous stabs. Yin Fengqi's expression changed slightly, but he could only grit his teeth and shake his other arm. The other black key immediately landed in Yin Fengqi's hand. The black key flicked out and turned into a sword shadow. With a trail of silver light, it directly stabbed towards Noah's throat. However, this time, before the sharp black key could pierce Noah's body, Noah's hand that was holding the rotten black key suddenly twisted strangely. Like a python that had wrapped around its prey, it tightly sucked onto Yin Fengqi's black key. With a forceful tug, Yin Fengqi lost his balance and fell forward. Whoosh! Almost instantaneously, a fist that was accompanied by a whistling sound of the wind suddenly flashed out. It was mixed with a terrifying force and violently blasted towards Yin Fengqi. Yin Fengqi's expression changed again and again. He could only give up on the black key that was strangely sucked in. He also clenched his fist and tried his best to gather his magic power. He gathered it on his fist and pressed it against the fist that was bombarding towards him. Boom! When the fists collided, a muffled sound and the impact of the strength chi shook the forest, causing the two figures who were exchanging punches to suddenly retreat. Wong! Immediately after, a gorgeous magic array rotated in front of one of the figures. A terrifying demonic power that would make anyone tremble in fear gathered in the magic array, condensing into a brilliant beam of light, and shot out like a flood. Yin Fengqi, who clearly understood the power of the light beam, could only shrink his eyes and feel a wave of fear in his heart. This was because Yin Fengqi was still unable to stabilize his body and was in a state of retreating. There was no way he could avoid the light beam that was shot at close range. Therefore, this time, the magic wind beam did not deviate and directly landed on Yin Fengqi's body. Boom! The shocking explosion thundered through the entire forest. Even outside the forest, it could be heard clearly. At this moment, in a corner of the forest, a scorching red fire burst out like a wave of fire that set the prairie ablaze. It was like a violent storm that burst out from the middle. All the trees in the area that were affected by the scorching fire were swallowed by the spreading fire almost in the blink of an eye and directly caught fire. The entire corner of the forest turned into a red lotus hell. It had completely turned into a sea of fire. The figure that was directly hit by the magic wind beam that caused all this was scorched black and his skin festered as if he had been calcined by the fire. Pucci, with a mouthful of red blood spurting out, Yin Fengqi's body, which was scorched black and smoking, fell powerlessly like a bird that had its wings broken and crashed heavily into the deep pit on the ground. There was not a single spot that was intact, and his breath was almost gone. Noah, who had retreated to the edge of the sea of fire, saw this scene. Even though he did not have any good feelings for Yin Fengqi and only had disgust and killing intent in his heart, he would not be stingy with his praise at this time. After all, it was already very praiseworthy that Yin Fengqi did not shatter into pieces after taking a full hit from the magic wind beam that could even directly annihilate a low-level fallen angel. Although this praise was exchanged for with Yin Fengqi's life. Chapter 775. Pond. The prairie fire continued to expand in the forest, causing the trees to burn one after another. Some of them had even turned into charred wood and fell to the ground with a crisp sound, creating dense sparks. In the center of the sea of fire, there was a huge pit. Yin Fengili's entire body was charred black, and even his skin was festering. He could not even feel his breath as he lay motionless in the pit. If it weren't for Noah's outstanding sensing ability, he would not have been able to detect the remaining trace of weak breath. Faced with such a scene that could be called a red lotus hell, Noah did not feel the slightest emotional fluctuation in his heart. He slowly walked into the center of the sea of fire and into the deep pit created by the explosion of the magic cannon. He arrived in front of Yin Fengili and looked down at him from above. No matter what kind of creature it is, they're all bound by things like rules. Just like the top and bottom of the food chain, those at the bottom will only end up being devoured by those at the top. Therefore, people will instinctively feel agitated when they break the rules. Such people usually do not have a good ending. Yin Fengili, this is your ending. Yin Fengili seemed to have heard Noah's voice. He tried his best to lift his completely blurred face, and even his expression could not be seen clearly. He spoke weakly. Noah. Dole. That's right, that's my name. Noah sneered. Remember it well. Don't die without knowing who took your life. Noah raised the rotten, withered branch in his hand that was covered with magical patterns and strengthened by the strengthening spell. It was not inferior to ordinary sharp weapons at all. Goodbye, imposter priest. After saying that, Noah suddenly stabbed down with a withered branch covered with magical patterns in his hand. Whoosh! However, at this moment, a sharp sound of something breaking through the air was heard, causing Noah's hand to stop moving. He immediately switched from stabbing to flicking, causing the rotten, withered branch to look like a full moon as it streaked across the space in front of him. Clang! Accompanied by a resounding sound of metal clashing and a burst of sparks, a luxurious sword that had suddenly shot over from afar and pierced towards Noah's heart was fiercely sent flying. Bang! At the same time, the rotten branch in Noah's hand exploded into pieces due to the clash with the luxurious sword. The remaining force pushed Noah back involuntarily and away from Yin Feng and Chili. This development caused Noah, who was retreating, to narrow his eyes. The same thing had happened not long ago. They did not appear within the range of Noah's sensing ability, but they launched an attack by throwing weapons at him. When Castor left the game, Gamu Soichiro died in such a situation. Although it was a gun last time and a sword this time, Noah did not think that the two situations were not caused by the same person. At the moment, Noah, who had stabilized his body, raised his head and looked at the direction of the luxurious sword. At this moment, a breath finally appeared within the range of Noah's sensing ability. Are you looking at my body at will without my permission? When such an unruly voice echoed over the entire sea of fire, a figure quietly walked out from the other side of the sea of fire. Well, although you are a bastard of unknown origin, you are still a guy who can confront Hercules head-on. I admit your value. With such a sentence, a blond man with his hand in his pocket appeared in front of Noah with a cold and arrogant smile on his face. Seeing the blond man, Noah's eyes narrowed again. It's you? He was wearing a black motorcycle suit. A chain-like ornament was wrapped around his waist. His hair color was bright golden. His pupils were as red as wine. This guy was clearly the mysterious blond man who suddenly appeared in front of Noah at night last time and mentioned Tong Ing in front of Noah. Yin Feng Chili also turned his head with difficulty and looked in the direction of the blond man. After a while, he squeezed out such a name. Gilgamesh Chili? The man called Gilgamesh by Yin Feng Chili glanced at the blackened man who was lying on the ground and had almost no breath. The expression on his face became ridiculing. I just left for a while, and you actually became like this. Chili, this time, you lost your mind. Yin Feng Chili seemed to want to say something, but because his movements were too big, dark red blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth, causing him to be unable to even cough. He could only continuously bleed like a corpse that was about to die. It seems that you can't do it anymore. Gilgamesh smiled as if he was helpless and indifferent at the same time. Forget it. Anyway, I have found something more interesting to do here. Thank you very much for accompanying me for so long. I had a great time, Chili. After saying that, Gilgamesh turned his gaze to Noah, who was opposite him, as though he was looking at something interesting. Then he suddenly laughed out loud. This is the first time we have met like this, right? Rider's master? Hearing this, Noah still looked straight at Gilgamesh, and after a while, he spoke. Who are you? Who am I? Gilgamesh slightly widened his eyes, then covered his forehead, as if he was amused, and laughed out loud. I have already allowed you to admire my figure, but you still didn't recognize who I am? And you even question me? Ha ha ha! Gilgamesh's laughter suddenly stopped, and a cruel emotion appeared in his wine-like eyes. A guy who can't even recognize the king doesn't need my mercy. As soon as he finished his words, clank! Wave-like golden ripples suddenly reverberated in the space around Gilgamesh. At this moment, a message suddenly appeared in Noah's mind. Profession rank, Archer Master. Yin Feng Chili real name. Gilgamesh attribute, Chaos. Good, ability value. Strength, B durability, C agility. C magic power, B luck. Ennoble phantasm. X profession skill. Magic power. EA is one of the 3 knights in the Holy Grail War. Because of the profession rank of Archer, he had obtained this skill, but in fact, he did not have the ability to deal with magic power, so he could only stay at the lowest level, level E. Although the level was low, because he had a variety of magic armors, he could actually nullify most magic. Solo action. A plus as an Archer servant. They would usually be given the ability to act alone. However, in the Archer job class, it was very rare for them to have this level of ability to act alone. They had already surpassed the highest level of A rank. Even without the help of a master, they would still be able to act. Even when using large-scale magic, the support of a master would become unnecessary. They would be able to completely ignore their master and act at will. Furthermore, as a servant who had obtained a physical body, even after the end of the Holy Grail War, they would still be able to continue to maintain the Earth realm. Preservation skill, golden rule. With the fate of being entangled with wealth in his life, he would not be confused by the problem of money in his life. From the beginning to the end, he would live a rich life, because there was a legend that all the treasures in the world in the era of survival were his own. He even had a treasure house to keep all the noble phantasms. This skill seemed to have nothing to do with combat, but in the aspect of equipment, this skill actually played a great role. Leadership ability. A plus with excellent command and leadership ability, he had the ability to be praised as the best king. This was a very rare skill. Generally speaking, if you want to rule a kingdom, as long as you have level B, it was enough. Reaching level A+ was already beyond popularity or technology. It could be said to be the level of magic or curse. So even just leading would greatly improve the morale. Divinity, B, A+. Even among the heroic spirits, he had the highest level of divine fitness. His divinity even surpassed that of the son of the Greek main god. After his death, he even became a true god, Hercules. Unfortunately, although he had such a high level of divine fitness, he still hated the gods, resulting in his level being reduced to B. Chapter 776. The sudden feedback in his mind made Noah completely fall into a state of shock. It seems that Gilgamesh's sudden attack stimulated Noah's ability as a master, allowing Noah to spy on Gilgamesh's ability value. But what's going on? Archer. Isn't the Archer of this Holy Grail War Rin Inosaka's servant? What's going on with this Archer in front of me? Moreover, up until now, the 7 servants of this year's Holy Grail War have all appeared, haven't they? The second Archer? The 8th servant? Master or Yin Fengili? Yin Fengili has 2 servants? What the hell is going on? Oh, you have an interesting expression? Gilgamesh, who was surrounded by golden space ripples, seemed to have seen through the bewilderment in Noah's heart. He spoke in amusement. Are you wondering why there is an 8th servant, Rider's Master? With such a sneer, Gilgamesh said proudly. Unfortunately, that's something that only those who can survive are qualified to know. You could try to survive in my hands. In that case, I can still be merciful and tell you. After that, Gilgamesh gently raised his hand. Buzz dash! Suddenly, from the golden ripples that fluctuated from the space around Gilgamesh, weapons slowly emerged as if they were floating from the water. They were weapons that looked extremely luxurious at first glance. There were swords. There were knives. There were guns. There were halberds. It was as if every type of weapon in the world was included in it. In the golden space ripples, at least dozens of weapons emerged, as if they were put on a bow that was fully drawn, and the tip was pointed in the direction of Noah in front of him. Seeing this scene, Noah's face finally showed a touch of surprise. Noble phantasm? Yes. There were at least dozens of luxurious knives, swords, spears, and halberds. All of them represented the hero phantasm itself as the strongest trump card. That was why Noah was shocked. Although he was not from this world, Noah's knowledge of this world was not inferior to the people in this world. Therefore, Noah knew that there were people who had more than one hero phantasm as the strongest trump card. Generally, hero phantasm could only have one hero phantasm. A very small number of hero phantasm had more than one hero phantasm, but there were only about 3 of them. Now, in front of Noah, how many hero phantasm had? The number of hero phantasm should not exist at all. Despite the shock in his heart, Noah calmly searched his mind for a piece of information about Gilgamesh's defensive skill that he had just probed. Golden Rule. Ahas the fate of being entangled with wealth for the rest of his life. He will not be troubled by money for the rest of his life. He will live like a millionaire from the beginning to the end, because there is a legend that he has taken all the treasures in the world for himself. He even has a treasure vault that keeps all the hero phantasm. This skill seemed to have nothing to do with combat, but in terms of equipment, this skill actually played a huge role. He had taken all the treasures in the world for himself, so he had a treasure vault that kept all the hero phantasm. This was Gilgamesh. In the oldest heroic epic recorded in human history, 2/3 of him was a god, and the remaining 1/3 was a human. As a half-human, half-god, he was the oldest king who ruled the ancient Sumerian city-state of Uruk in the pre-Christian era. For a servant of unknown origin, this kind of treatment is really too extravagant, isn't it? Gilgamesh seemed to be enjoying Noah's performance, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Let me tell you something. This is my noble phantasm, the Gate of Babylon. It is a treasure vault that contains all the prototypes of noble phantasms and technologies. You should be satisfied that you are able to see my treasure vault. After saying this, Gilgamesh suddenly waved his hand down. From the ripples in space, the various hero phantasms, such as knives, swords, spears, halberds, and other hero phantasms, suddenly stopped. Then, like bullets, they shot out from the hero phantasm called the Gate of Babylon with bursts of golden light, and their speed was extremely fast. Noah's eyes flashed, and he suddenly raised his hand. One by one, magic arrays suddenly appeared from his body, like the muzzles of cannons, aimed forward and gathered an amazing amount of magic. Immediately, in the midst of the vibrations in space, beams of magic power burst out from the magic arrays, cutting through the air like laser beams, and suddenly collided with the hero phantasm. Pung, 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 pung. The collision between the powerful beams of light and the hero phantasm caused a burst of loud and clear explosion sounds, shaking up a circle of shock waves. The shock waves spread out, and the surrounding sea of fire was shaken and scattered, dispersing a lot of it in an instant. Seeing this scene, Gilgamesh raised his eyebrows. Magic? The power is quite amazing. Although he said this, Gilgamesh's face had a trace of disdain. Since it's like this, then I'll use a special weapon to deal with you. Following Gilgamesh's words, in the golden space ripples that filled the surrounding space, it was obvious that they were completely different from the hero phantasm just now. The appearance more or less changed from luxurious to simple weapons, and with a rise and fall, they were like arrows, once again cutting through the air, shooting in the direction of Noah's direction. Noah just wanted to use the magic cannon again, but there was a warning in his heart for no reason. Intuition told Noah, If they were to use the magic cannons to offset it again, the result would definitely be different this time. Noah, who was extremely confident in his intuition, did not have the slightest hesitation, and his figure retreated quickly. Pong! The attacking Hero Phantasm's rain of Hero Phantasm fell on the spot where Noah was just a moment ago, and directly exploded the ground there, setting off thick smoke and fire. "Oh, you noticed it?" Gilgamesh said leisurely. "No, I should say that I felt it, right?" Noah, who had retreated, steadied himself. He was speechless when he sensed that the mana residue that had filled the space around him had suddenly disappeared. Those relics just now were all relics used for magic, right? The hero spirit's relics had all sorts of abilities. For example, Saber's invisible air had the ability to turn people invisible. For example, Lancer's Gibalg had a sure kill ability. For example, Archer's Law Ajax had the ability to defend against thrown weapons. Another example was Berserker's 12 Trials God's Hand, which gave him the ability to revive and resist attacks to a certain extent. Just now, the relic that Gilgamesh took out had the effect of breaking magic. It was a relic that could counter magic. That was why the magic residue that permeated the air was eliminated. It was not until this moment that Noah finally understood what the phrase, the prototype that owns all the noble relics meant. That meant that Gilgamesh's Gate of Babylon had relics that could deal with all kinds of situations. As long as he targeted the opponent's weakness and took out the corresponding relic, then Gilgamesh would be invincible. A hero spirit that could use all kinds of relics. This was the kind of person Noah was facing. This made Noah frown slightly. "It's a little tricky, a little tricky?" Gilgamesh seemed to be laughing out of anger and closed his eyes. "Then let me see. Why would you think that it's a little tricky when facing my treasure?" However, before Noah and Gilgamesh could start fighting again, a ray of light shot up to the sky and attracted their attention. "That's the direction of the church?" Chapter 777. Clank. While Noah was chasing after Yen Fengili, in front of the church, in the courtyard that seemed to have turned into a piece of scorched earth, the battle between Rider and Lancer started with a fierce sound as the prelude. In the field, the one who launched the first attack was naturally Lancer, who was known for his bravery. Lancer's body was surrounded by layers of slightly blood-red, demonic energy, causing his body to turn into a blurry shadow. Then, he charged towards Rider at lightning speed. Among the 7 classes in the Holy Grail War, Lancer had the highest requirement for ability points, second only to Saber. Therefore, in terms of ability points, if Saber had the highest requirement for ability points, then Lancer would be second. In addition, only knights with the highest level of agility could become Lancer's servant. One could only imagine how fast the Lancer, whose real name was Ku Churin, was. That speed alone was enough to make Rider, who also had the highest level of agility, tense up his body and face the attack with 120% seriousness. With such agility, a distance of a few dozen meters could be said to be covered in the blink of an eye for Lancer. Rider only felt a few breaths of time, and that blurry shadow had already flashed in front of him. Lancer tightened his grip on the magic spear in his hand, and like a crimson ray of light, it shot straight at Rider's heart. If it were anyone else, even if they were also servants, they would probably break out in cold sweat because of Lancer's speed. However, Rider, who also had the highest level of agility, was already prepared. Just when Lancer was 3 meters away from Rider, Rider made his move. As though he was teleporting, Rider's figure suddenly moved horizontally as he retreated backwards. The chain dagger in his hand swiftly pierced out. The powerful force directly caused a faint arc of light to appear in the air where the chain dagger passed, bringing with it a sharp whistling sound as it shot forward. Lancer was obviously surprised to see that Rider was actually able to open up the distance between them at such a close distance. Although they were both servants with the highest level of agility, Lancer and Rider specialized in different areas. Lancer was good at instantaneous explosive speed. What Rider excelled at was average movement speed. Therefore, in terms of instantaneous burst of speed, Ryder shouldn't be that high. But now, Ryder's instantaneous burst of speed was almost catching up to Lancer. Of course, now was not the time to think about this. Sensing the sharp wind coming towards him, Lancer calmed himself down and let out a sinister laugh. He tapped the ground with the tip of his foot, and his body suddenly floated up. The magic spear in his hand was like a bolt of lightning as it ruthlessly pierced towards Ryder, who was right below him. Ding! The crimson magic spear heavily pierced the chain dagger that was directly under Lancer's body. As sparks sputtered, a strong force burst out and easily suppressed the chain dagger. The moment the magic spear touched the chain dagger, Lancer's arm that was holding the spear bent and bent. The magic spear that had pierced Ryder's chain dagger immediately used the force of the dagger to propel Lancer's body, causing Lancer to do a somersault in midair. Like an eagle descending from the sky, the sharp magic spear shot towards Ryder's head with a chilling wind that made one's scalp numb. Facing Lancer's sudden and fierce attack, Ryder's face was solemn. His feet moved, and his body instantly retreated a few steps. The chain dagger in his hand rose from bottom to top, and he fiercely raised it. Clang! The short sword and long spear collided heavily. The force from the collision caused Lancer's body, who was descending from the sky like an eagle, to be lifted into the air. As a result, Ryder, who was standing below, should have withstood the greater force, but his body didn't even tremble. With the chain dagger in his hand, he continued to retreat. Monstrous strength again? Lancer, who was floating in midair, instantly saw the reason why he was at a disadvantage in the previous confrontation. What a troublesome skill. Although it can only be maintained for a very short period of time, it can be used at any time, and it doesn't look like there's any interval between uses. I can't compete with strength, but I also can't compete with speed. My opponent's speed is not below mine, so it's really troublesome. Saying so, the smile on Lancer's face became wider and wider. However, in hand-to-hand combat, Ryder is obviously not good at it. I'll use high-intensity close combat to suppress her. As soon as this thought came to his mind, Lancer's body trembled slightly. A blood-red magic flame suddenly burst out from his body, lingering around him, and then converged on the magic spear in Lancer's hand, causing the already extremely bright red spear to become even redder. Huh! At that moment, Lancer roared. His body spun, and like a whirlwind, he suddenly flew out. With a whoosh sound, his body madly shot toward Ryder's direction, and in an instant, he was in front of Ryder. As soon as he entered the attack range, Lancer didn't hesitate. His arm shook rapidly, and the magic spear was like a crimson-red viper, drawing a series of afterimages in the air, fiercely piercing toward Ryder's body. In an instant, Ryder, whose speed was not as fast as Lancer, could only raise the chain dagger in her hand. While maintaining her movement, she waved the chain dagger in her hand like a whip, pulling up the chain that was connected to the dagger in her hand. She waved it repeatedly, and the silver chains formed a steel net, protecting her entire body behind it. Ding, 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 ding. The spear shadows of the devil spear pierced through the protective net of chains at an astonishing speed, causing a series of crisp sounds to ring out. It was as though a strange melody was being played, producing a series of pleasing notes. Ding, 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 ding. Under the continuous attacks, Ryder could only wave the chain in his hand to block them, but his body was constantly retreating. It felt as if he needed to use a chain to block every raindrop in the pouring rain, not letting a single drop fall on his body. One could imagine how difficult it was. Lancer's idea was indeed correct. Although in terms of ability value, Ryder was not inferior to Lancer. In terms of close combat, Ryder was obviously inferior to the Grand Knight, who was known as Fierce Dog. Over time, in the face of such a dense rain of attacks, even Ryder's defensive stance began to crumble. His movements began to feel awkward. Ha ha! Take this, take this, take this, take this. Perhaps it was because he was too excited, Lancer couldn't help but laugh wildly. While madly thrusting his spear like a storm, he taunted Ryder. What's wrong? Ryder, where's your imposing manner from just now? Reacting to Lancer's arrogant attitude, a fierce look flashed across Ryder's face. Without hesitation, he lashed out the chain that he had been using to form a defensive net like a whip. Like a fierce whip, he lashed it towards Lancer's direction, fiercely hitting the crimson demon spear. Clang! In a loud sound of the collision, the two figures were sent flying backward in the strong wind. After rubbing against the ground for a distance of more than 10 meters, they finally stopped. However, Lancer was still the same as before, not showing any signs of being in a difficult position. As for Ryder, because he had just dealt with Lancer's continuous attacks, his breathing began to become disordered. It was clear who had the upper hand and who had the lower hand. No matter what, a cavalryman competing in close combat with me, a spearman, is simply asking for trouble. The sneer on Lancer's face faded slightly, and he raised his magic spear. You should also show your true ability. Chapter 778. It's time for you to show your true strength, right? Lancer's words froze the entire atmosphere. Ryder was silent. There was no doubt that Ryder had not shown his true strength yet. After all, in the Holy Grail War, every job class had its own requirements. The requirement for the Saber job class was that the heroic spirit must be able to reach the highest level in all aspects, except for magic power and wield sword-type weapons. The requirement for the Lancer job class was that the heroic spirit must have the highest level of agility and wield a gun-type weapon. The requirement for the Archer job class was that the heroic spirit must specialize in long-range attacks, wield a powerful shooting weapon, or have a special ability related to shooting weapons. Only the heroic spirit that met the job class requirement could use this job class as a vessel and descend into this world as a servant. Obviously, the servant that met the job class requirement also meant that the servant was good at fighting. Ryder, on the other hand, required a heroic spirit to have a deep relationship with a mount. As a result, the ability of the Ryder job class was generally lower than that of the three knights. However, they were able to make up for it by using the abilities of their mounts, which they had a deep relationship with, to display high-level riding skills and fight against their enemies. Therefore, the Ryder was not good at close combat at all. The reason why their ability points were not lower than the three knights, and their ability points requirements were second only to sabers, lancers, was because of the vast amount of magic provided by Master Noah. However, even so, the Ryder's strength was not in close combat. The Ryder's strength and durability were only B-level, which proved this point. Otherwise, with Noah's magic power, the Ryder's strength and durability would definitely be more than B-level. Because Ryder wasn't a heroic spirit that specialized in close combat, Ryder's stamina and durability didn't continue to increase. The true strength of a servant, Ryder, was in the aspect of mounts. Lancer, who was very clear about this, stared at the Ryder in front of him with a very serious expression. You're not planning to hide your strength at this level, are you? Show me what you've got. Hearing this, Ryder slowly raised his head and looked at Lancer. Indeed, it's rare for Master to allow me to cause a ruckus. If I don't show my true strength, it will be too disappointing. As she said this, a burst of suppressed magic gradually rose from Ryder's tall and slender body like a strong wave of fire. Then I won't hold back. Don't regret it. Lancer, the magic power rising from Ryder's body suddenly stagnated. Clang! Suddenly, a strong light erupted from Ryder's body. It was an extremely pure white light. In such a burst of strong light, Ryder turned into a ray of white light and suddenly rushed into the sky. After rising to a certain height, it suddenly became like a white sun and suddenly turned into a shocking source of light. Lancer subconsciously raised a hand to block in front of him, but his eyes never closed. He stared intently at the white, sun-like light source in the air. At a certain moment, his pupils shrank. This was because Lancer saw it clearly. In the center of the strong light, a shadow slowly emerged. It was the body of the shadow that made Lancer's expression become more and more serious. In the end, he even cursed out loud. I see. That's why you're Rider. Damn it, with such a thing as a mount. What you if not Rider? It was normal for Lancer to have such a reaction, because he saw fantasy. Whoosh! In the whistling sound of wings, in the center of the white, sun-like light source, a horse appeared under the night sky. It was a white horse that was surging with blue mist. It had a pair of wings and was incomparably white. It gave off an extremely noble and holy feeling. At this moment, Ryder was riding on such a white horse with wings, looking down at Lancer below. Her figure was like that of a goddess. In fact, before she became a monster of Gorgon, Medusa was a goddess. Legend had it that when Medusa fell as a goddess and became a monster of Gorgon and was beheaded by Perseus, a Pegasus named Pegasus flew out of her body. Because of this story, the Pegasus was also known as the son of Medusa. Therefore, Medusa, who had once given birth to Pegasus in her body, had an extremely deep relationship with the Pegasus, a creature that only existed in fantasy. This relationship had now grown into the power of Medusa, allowing Medusa to descend with the title of Rider. Yes, Rider's mount was the Pegasus, and this Pegasus that only existed in fantasy had a general name in this world. Fantasy breed. With an A+ level riding skill, Rider, whose real name was Medusa, rode the fantasy breed called the Pegasus and descended from the sky. Since even this child has appeared, then I won't show any mercy, Lancer. Rider's voice echoed around. Next, it's time to determine the winner. After saying that, the chain dagger in Rider's hand gradually turned into a ray of light, forming a rope of light that wrapped around the neck of the Pegasus under him. Rider held it tightly. At this moment, the aura of the Pegasus under Rider suddenly rose, and even the magic around it skyrocketed. Nay! The holy white horse immediately flapped its wings and let out a long neigh, and even its pair of eyes became blood red. Bellerophon. This was Rider's noble artifact. It could greatly increase the ability of the summoned fantasy breed, and it was a noble artifact that combined attack and defense. With the help of the relic, Rider's riding ability had reached a whole new level. It caused the space around the Pegasus to ripple and set off layers of airwaves. It was a shocking sight to behold. Ha! Facing the amazing pressure from the sky, Lancer was not the least bit timid, but instead laughed out loud in joy. This is it. This is it. I participated in this boring ceremony just to have a good fight with an opponent of this level. In the midst of this ecstatic laughter, Lancer quickly performed a spear dance, and the magic spear in his hand was like a javelin, holding it up. In that case, I will also use my strongest attack. Just like what you said, Rider, let's have a showdown. Suddenly, a burst of blood-red magic suddenly rose from the magic spear that Lancer was holding on his shoulder, ready to throw, like a red stream of air, suddenly skyrocketing. Immediately, the tip of the magic spear gathered a whirlpool-like red light wave. This is another use of my noble artifact. It gives up the concept of being dirty, but strengthens the power and range of effect, because if it is casually used, it will cause too much damage. So under normal circumstances, I don't like to use it. Lancer's ecstatic voice also echoed under the moonlight. I will use this spear to meet your full blow. While speaking, the magic spear in Lancer's hand turned into a whirlpool-like light wave, and the magic gathered at the tip of the spear became denser and denser. In the end, it had expanded to cover all the space within 3 to 4 meters of Lancer. Feeling the amazing magic rising from Lancer's body at this moment, Rider smiled fearlessly. In the next moment, a white comet and a red meteor burst out from the sky and the earth, respectively. Bellerophon, Gibal, the real name of the noble artifact, was released. The comet and the meteor collided fiercely in midair. Dong! A violent, loud sound resounded through the sky. Chapter 779. Bellerophon. When Rider released the true name of his precious artifact, beneath him, the pure and holy Pegasus let out a long neigh. The surrounding spiritual energy like mist curled around its body like flames, burning fiercely and expanding in an instant. In the blink of an eye, the holy Pegasus was completely covered by the flame-like magic mist. With a long neigh, it flapped its wings and swooped down toward Lancer under Ryder's control. Whoosh! It was as if it had transformed into a white comet. The sacred heavenly horse descended from the sky and streaked across the space. Wherever it passed, the atmosphere fluctuated violently. It was like ripples of water that continuously spread out. Looking at the white comet falling from the sky, Lancer raised his crimson magic spear. His whole body looked bright red under the light of the red magic flame on the magic spear. Then he poured all the magic power in his body into his beloved spear at once. Gibal. The moment he released the other real name of his spear, the blue veins on Lancer's strong arms bulged so obviously that they could be seen clearly even under the tight clothes. Immediately, Lancer's arm shook, and he threw out his magic spear fiercely. Wong! The tip of the demonic spear, which had a crimson whirlpool of light rippling around it, instantly transformed into a crimson meteor. It cut through the atmosphere and set off a series of turbulent flows like a violent storm. It was like a rocket that soared into the sky, shooting towards the horizon. A white comet falling from the sky. A red comet soaring into the sky. Two streaks of starlight, one white and one red, shook the space. Under the situation where the whole space was illuminated, they heavily collided in midair. At that moment, the whole sky suddenly became quiet. Then, an extremely terrifying energy suddenly exploded from the point of contact where the two streaks of starlight collided in midair. Dong! An earth-shattering roar resounded through the sky, turning into a sound wave. Like a circle of shock waves, it vibrated out. In midair, the white comet and the red meteor collided with each other, setting off a terrifying shockwave and intense flames. At this moment, the entire night sky seemed to be occupied by a sea of fire, causing violent shock waves to continuously erupt. However, this scene could not be maintained for long. In just a few breaths of time, in the sea of fire in midair, the white comet that collided with the red meteor suddenly trembled, and an extremely terrifying magic power burst out of its body, causing the white comet to expand several times in size. Under such circumstances, the crimson meteor formed by the crimson demonic spear trembled. The crimson demonic chi flames on it were gradually extinguished by the terrifying demonic chi flames rising from the white comet at a speed visible to the naked eye. Punk! In the next moment, the red meteor was directly scattered by the white comet, turning into a burst of red sparks that scattered in all directions. The white comet, which did not lose its momentum, rushed out from it, turning into a gorgeous ray of light that shot to the ground. What? Dash! Lancer only had time to show a shocked expression on his face. Then, the comet from the sky filled his entire field of vision, bringing with it a terrifying gust of wind as it fell. Pong! In the courtyard in front of the church, a pure white spark exploded on the ground, causing a deafening explosion. With a terrifying impact wind, it swept out and spread in all directions. The overwhelming wave of fire and the shocking impact mixed with each other like a surging wave, sweeping in all directions, causing the entire church to be affected. Under the terrifying impact and the wave of fire, the church was quickly annihilated. The surrounding walls, solid ground, and ancient courtyard were all turned into fragments under this impact and were drowned by the wave of fire. No one knew how long this scene lasted. It was not until a long time later that the terrifying wind and the intense fire gradually weakened and faded in the air. Whoosh! In the whistling sound of wings flapping, Ryder, who was riding on a Pegasus, floated in midair, looking down from above. Her face was as calm as an ancient well, and her posture was like a goddess, pure and beautiful. On the ground, in a huge crater that spanned over 100 meters, Lancer, whose tights were already in tatters, was lying inside. His body was covered with countless scars of various sizes, and dark red blood was dripping from his wounds. It was simply too horrible to look at. The winner had been decided. Ha! Ha ha! Even in such a miserable state, Lancer was still laughing. Looking at Ryder, who was floating in the sky, there was no pain on his blood-stained face. Instead, there was only satisfaction. The goddess who rode on Pegasus, I see. The person who fought with me is actually such a person? Lancer finally recognized Ryder's true identity. Your relic must be at least grade A, right? Looking down at Ku Churin, who was covered in blood and could no longer move, Ryder nodded slowly. Even so, he still insisted on speaking without hesitation and without a trace of weakness. Bellerophon. This was a relic that could increase the ability of the summoned fantasy breed by leaps and bounds. It was a grade A+ relic that combined both attack and defense. It was also Ryder's strongest trump card. On the other hand, Lancer's Gibalg was a grade B+ relic. Even with the plus feature that could double the damage in an instant, it was still a grade lower than Ryder's relic. It was already clear who was stronger and who was weaker. Cough, cough. Lancer coughed a few times, and his voice finally started to become weak. I thought that was a human relic. It turns out that it's the same as my gun, a military relic. The hero spirit's relics were categorized according to their effects and areas of effect. The most basic classification was a human relic and a military relic. As the name suggested, the so-called human relic was a relic that only worked on a limited number of targets, such as oneself or a single enemy. This type of relic did not need to consume much magic, and its efficiency was very high in a one-on-one battle. Therefore, in a relic battle, human relic was usually the most commonly used type of relic. On the other hand, a military relic was a relic that could be used on an army of tens or even hundreds of people. It was a relic that could work on a wide range of targets. In short, it was a relic that could carry out large-scale destruction and bombing. Its power was so shocking that it could affect the entire army. In terms of power, if a human relic was compared to a single shotgun, a military relic would be a missile. The magic that such a relic needed to consume was shocking. After all, the power was completely different. There was a difference between a human relic and a military relic. The difference between the two types of relic was the number and range of targets that it could be used on. Other than that, there were other types of relic. For example, the magic relic that Gilgamesh used on Noah was a relic that specialized in magic. According to the different targets and range of effects, the relic was divided into a few types. Human relic and military relic were the most common types. The relic that Ryder and Lancer used this time was a military relic. Undoubtedly, you used a military relic. However, you don't seem to have consumed much magic at all. The guy who provided you with magic is really a powerful guy. I used up all my magic in one go to use a military relic. Lancer laughed at himself. Really, losing to a woman like this is not cool at all. After saying this, Lancer's figure slowly turned into a cloud of mist and disappeared into the deep pit. Lancer left the arena. Seeing Lancer leave, Ryder, who was riding on the Pegasus, remained silent for a while as if she was offering her last respect and condolences to Lancer. Then, she turned her head and looked at the forest in the distance, a corner that was covered by a sea of fire. Then, Ryder, who was riding the Pegasus, turned into a comet and flew away. Chapter 780. On the other side, Noah and Gilgamesh, who were attracted by the light that suddenly soared into the sky from the direction of the church, both looked at the white light source under the night sky. When Ryder was summoned, Noah had already learned from Ryder about the treasures and trump cards of the servant who appeared in the form of a goddess. Therefore, Noah naturally knew that the mount that had a deep relationship with Ryder was the Pegasus named Pegasus. It existed in Ryder's blood and could respond to Ryder's summons at any time. It was a fantasy breed like Bio. Of course, because of the world fragment, Bio had mutated. Although it was a fantasy breed, its ability had long surpassed the dragon species, which was known as the strongest among fantasy breeds. It even surpassed the category of fantasy beast and reached the level of mythical beast. Although Ryder's Pegasus was not a mutant like Bio, its ability was one of the best in the category of fantasy breeds. In addition, Ryder had an A+ level military treasure that could enhance the ability of the summoned fantasy breed. After using this noble artifact, the Heavenly Horse's ability would not lose to the strongest dragon species. Under such circumstances, once this trump card was used, Noah believed that Ryder would definitely not lose to Lancer. Sure enough, in the next moment, the white comet that fell from the sky collided with the red meteor that soared into the sky. The white comet's victory was the result. Looking at the church that was annihilated under the violent impact, Noah chuckled. It seems that Ryder has already solved the problem. Has that dog been killed? Gilgamesh seemed to have the same thoughts as Noah and curled his lips. Well, forget it. As an entertainment program, that dog has done its duty. Although a dog is still a dog, it can only be used when guarding the door. With that said, Gilgamesh raised his hand, and the golden space ripples that fluctuated in the space around him disappeared like a door that was suddenly closed. Noah raised his eyebrows. Not fighting anymore? Hero King. There's already too much entertainment tonight. Gilgamesh glanced at Noah and laughed mockingly. We've already dealt with a lot of useless bastards. If we continue, it will be boring. You've saved your life, kid. Although Gilgamesh's tone was still as arrogant and conceited, his words were indeed correct in their meaning. Tonight, quite a number of people had left the venue. Archer, Lancer, Caster, Assassin. In just one night, 4 of the 7 servants who appeared because of the Holy Grail War had already left. This should be the fastest exit rate for servant in history, right? There are only 3 servants left. No, if the mysterious appearance of the 2nd archer and the 8th servant were included, then there should be 4 servants left. But why would there be a 2nd archer and an 8th servant? You said that if I survive, you'll tell me the truth, right? Noah looked straight at Gilgamesh. Since you don't plan to fight again, then I'll consider it my win, right? The oldest king in human history was not only arrogant, but also capricious. If he were directly announced his victory like this, it was very likely that the other party would fly into a rage out of humiliation and launch an attack on Noah. However, that was not enough to make Noah retreat. With all the prototypes of the noble phantoms, Gilgamesh's power was obviously above any servant. If he really went crazy, then there should be no servant who could guarantee that they would have a 100% chance of winning against Gilgamesh, who could casually vent his noble phantoms. But that was it. Noah could see it. The real strong one was not Gilgamesh, but the noble phantoms called Gate of Babylon. As long as he could find a way to deal with the Gate of Babylon, then with Gilgamesh's ability value and skills, only an intermediate servant would be able to deal with him, right? With such an obvious weakness, it was not scary. At least, Noah did not know how many enemies who were more terrifying than Gilgamesh were. Even if he did not use his authority, knowing Gilgamesh's weakness, although it could not be said that there was no threat, there was no reason to be afraid. Therefore, Noah did not have any misgivings and asked directly, "What's going on?" Hearing this, Gilgamesh looked at Noah coldly, but it was met with Noah's even colder gaze, which made him show a happy expression. The reason is very simple, kid. Because I'm not a servant of this Holy Grail War, but I've been staying in this world since the end of the last Holy Grail War. I'm just an archer of that Holy Grail War. A servant who stayed in this world after the end of the last Holy Grail War. Noah's heart suddenly moved. The hero king in front of him did have the ability to stay in this world after the end of the Holy Grail War. With an A+ level solo action skill. As an archer's servant, he would generally be given the ability to act alone. Meanwhile, Gilgamesh's solo skill had already surpassed the highest tier of a rank. Even without a master, he could move about freely. In fact, when he used large-scale mana, the master support was unnecessary. He could completely ignore the master and move about freely. Not only that, Noah clearly remembered that in the introduction of Gilgamesh's solo action skill, there was also the sentence because he obtained a body as a servant. Even after the end of the Holy Grail War, he could still continue to maintain this world. Therefore, if Gilgamesh continued to stay in this world after the end of the last Holy Grail War until now, then it could be considered as an explanation. But why could Gilgamesh, as a servant, obtain a body? Are you wondering why I can still stay in this world after the end of the last Holy Grail War until now? Gilgamesh didn't know that he obtained a body, but Noah already knew. He thought that Noah was wondering why he could continue to stay in this world after the end of the Holy Grail War. Gilgamesh inexplicably said such a sentence happily. Boy, do you know what the so-called Holy Grail is? Hearing Gilgamesh's meaningful words, Noah narrowed his eyes. Isn't it a wish-granting machine that can grant any wish? Wish-granting machine? Gilgamesh seemed to have heard something extremely funny. He bent down without caring about his image and laughed out loud. His voice was full of joy and ridicule. No, that's not a wish-granting machine. It's just a killing machine. Killing machine? Noah frowned, but his heart suddenly sank, because Noah remembered what Archer said before he disappeared. All the evil in this world? You already know all of it. Gilgamesh was surprised, but soon laughed again. You're right, boy. All the evil in this world. That's the true face of the Holy Grail. It's no longer an omnipotent wish-granting machine. It's just a curse that exists to curse humans. It's completely contaminated by the concept of evil. Saying such a sentence, Gilgamesh opened one of his hands. His face was full of evil smile. But isn't it interesting to make such a thing? Noah's heart suddenly had an ominous premonition, making his eyes become sharp. What are you going to do? Gilgamesh didn't answer, but reached out his hand, and a ripple immediately appeared in the space beside him. From that ripple, a person rolled out. Seeing the person rolling out of the golden ripple, Noah was startled, and then said in surprise, Shinji Tamatsuki? Surprisingly, it was Shinji Tamatsuki. Chapter 781. Ah! As soon as he appeared on the scene, Tong Shinji was like a person who was tortured to the point that he could no longer sober up. He lay on the ground, looking at the sky with dull eyes, like a complete retard. And on Tong Shinji's face, saliva was unscrupulously dripping from the corner of his mouth. He was not restrained at all. Of course, what surprised Noah was not Tong Shinji's performance, but his appearance. At this time, Tong Shinji's face, which originally had some redeeming features, had hideous blue veins wriggling. It looked like something was drilling under Tong Shinji's skin. If you looked carefully, you could find it. Not only on his face, but on Tong Shinji's whole body. Those blue veins were constantly wriggling, looking very disgusting. Originally, Noah didn't have any good impression of Tong Shinji. Therefore, seeing Tong Shinji's miserable appearance, Noah didn't have the slightest sympathy and compassion. Noah was just puzzled. Puzzled as to why Tong Shinji, who was lucky enough not to die in his hands, became like this. How is it? Very ugly, right? Gilgamesh didn't even look at Tong Shinji, who looked like a retard, and sneered. But ugly things shouldn't be decorated. This posture is the shape that is most in line with the concept of evil. It's the best to use it as a contaminated holy grail. Noah didn't speak, just stared at Gilgamesh, which made Gilgamesh's smile somewhat slowed down. Don't look at me with that kind of eyes, bastard. The person who made such an ugly thing is not me. Speaking of this, Gilgamesh didn't know what to think, and his expression became sarcastic. Well, for you, this is not completely unrelated. After all, the one who should have become like this is not Shinji, but the girl you have been paying attention to. This sentence finally made Noah react. What do you mean? Don't you know? The sarcasm on Gilgamesh's face became more and more intense. Do you really think that Mamatsuki Masanori almost transformed the little girl adopted from the Yuanzaka family just to let her adapt to the Mamatsuki family's magic? Gilgamesh stretched out a foot, stepped on the face of Tong Shinji, who was lying on the ground like a retard, and grinned. Originally, Jiantong planned to transform that little girl in order to make Jiantong Ing into the Holy Grail. Hearing this sentence, Noah's face sank heavily. Before this year's Holy Grail War, this boring ceremony had already been held 4 times. Regardless of Noah's expression, or rather, enjoying Noah's expression, Gilgamesh not only did not have the tendency to stop, but the more he spoke, the more energetic he became. The first 4 Holy Grail Wars were declared failures due to various problems. Sometimes it was because the magicians of the 3 families had internal strife and killed each other. Sometimes it was because the servants lost control, which led to the complete collapse of the whole ceremony. In the last Holy Grail War, it can be said that it was the only example of the Holy Grail being formed, but at that time, the boring existence called Holy Grail had been contaminated and became the cursed door to hell. So, that Holy Grail was destroyed as soon as it was formed. I was the only one who survived to the end. When I was about to touch the Holy Grail, the thing inside flowed out because of the destruction and poured on my body. Gilgamesh covered his head, showing an insolent expression. That curse will only curse and kill humans. As a servant, if I were to come into contact with that curse, as a spirit that should have been placed into the Holy Grail after losing the battle, I would also be contaminated together with the Holy Grail. Even my soul would become filthy. It's a pity that a curse of that level isn't enough to drive me crazy. That's why I got a body from that curse, and I don't need to consume my mana in this world anymore, Gilgamesh said with a sinister smile as he looked straight at Noah. Of course, it's not only me who got benefits. A certain insect who dreamed of eternal life all day long also got a fragment of the destroyed Holy Grail. Originally, he planned to implant it into the little girl who was adopted by the Anaka family and transform the little girl into the little Holy Grail. Then, in this Holy Grail War, he let the little girl collect the souls of the defeated servants, so as to get the real Holy Grail. Unfortunately, this plan failed from the beginning. The Holy Grail War that existed in Fuyuki City was caused by the Great Holy Grail that collected magic power from the ley line. The little Holy Grail was responsible for collecting the souls of the defeated servants and storing them. After collecting the souls of the 6 servants, the little Holy Grail could use this power to open the hole leading to the origin. Then the Great Holy Grail would use a huge amount of magic power to fix this hole, so as to achieve the final goal of going to the origin. In other words, the little Holy Grail was the trophy of the Holy Grail War, a wish-granting machine that could fulfill all wishes. Of course, only after collecting the souls of the 6 servants, the little Holy Grail would become the real Holy Grail. If someone made another little Holy Grail and used this little Holy Grail to collect the souls of the servants, when the souls of the 6 servants were collected, the person who held this little Holy Grail would naturally be able to get the Holy Grail. For a long time, the little Holy Grail was prepared by Einstein-Balin. However, this time, someone else planned to make another little Holy Grail. This person was Masanori Nakamura. And the little Holy Grail that Masanori Nakamura wanted to make was Masanori Sakura. Unfortunately, Masanori Nakamura failed. I don't know where the power came from, but the whole plan was hindered. That insect almost went crazy. Otherwise, it wouldn't have used this guy as the Holy Grail. Gilgamesh kicked Shinji Mitsuki under his feet. Implanting a contaminated Holy Grail fragment was like stuffing cotton into a doll and randomly transforming it. The personality called Shinji Nakamura should have already been tortured and transformed and completely disappeared because of the purgatory pain, right? Noah finally understood why Shinji Nakamura became like this. Shinji Nakamura had already been transformed into a hasty little Holy Grail by Masanori Nakamura. And the reason why Gilgamesh brought Shinji Nakamura with him had already floated to the surface. Over at Ludong Temple, the guy who killed Kugi Munikaro was you, right? Noah took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "You went there to let Shinji Nakamura, the little Holy Grail, collect the servant soul, right? After all, Einstein-Balin also prepared the little Holy Grail." Gilgamesh smiled happily. In a situation where there are 2, Isn't it natural for the closer one to get what it wants first? Why did you do that? Noah only had this question. You also want to get the Holy Grail. The thing you said was contaminated and boring? Although it's boring, it's still very useful in terms of its function. Gilgamesh sneered. There's nothing more suitable than it to kill people. The humans in this era are all a bunch of boring bastards, and it makes people want to vomit. I've already decided to use it to get rid of the boring humans in this era. Because it's boring, so it has to be eliminated? Gilgamesh, who didn't know how ridiculous his words were, waved his hand, and a golden ripple covered Shinji Nakamura and put him away. What's in the chat here, boy? Even if it's a hasty Holy Grail, it should be able to barely take shape with another servant's soul. You have to pay attention to the safety of the two servants around you. Don't let them lose their lives if you're not careful. Leaving this sentence, Gilgamesh just wanted to leave, but a huge beam of light burst out and attacked his back. Bang! A shockwave that seemed to have materialized erupted and spread out in all directions. Chapter 782. Hung Dash. The magic light beam that fell on Gilgamesh's body set off a violent impact and intense flames, like a gust of wind, spreading in all directions. Looking at the sudden explosion in front of him, Noah raised a hand and pointed it in the direction of the explosion. An intricate magical array was spinning in his hand, and there was no emotion in his deep, dark eyes. There was only complete coldness in them. Not long after, the impact of the explosion and the intense flames began to dissipate. Among them, a huge shield appeared there without anyone knowing. Along with the gradually dissipating impact and the intense flames, it disappeared in the air, exposing Gilgamesh's figure. Lifting his head, looking at Noah in front of him, Gilgamesh's expression completely disappeared. It seems that you're in a hurry to disappear, boy. Noah just gently lowered his raised hand, facing Gilgamesh's gaze, which was like looking at a dead man, and smiled, a smile without the slightest emotion. Do you think that after saying those words, I would still silently watch you leave? So, you intend to stop me, intend to save mankind? Gilgamesh closed his eyes, like a volcano about to erupt. His whole body surged with pressure. Don't be stupid, boy. The so-called salvation should be based on value. Only valuable things need to be saved. This world is full of too many worthless bastards. All the evil in this world is born because of the evil thoughts of these bastards. Then, if mankind is obliterated by the evil born from themselves, isn't that a matter of course? While speaking, Gilgamesh seemed like he really wanted to vomit, and was speechless. In my time, although the population is not as dense as it is now, but everyone has their own value. Even slaves have their own places to be used. Losing one is a waste, but in this era, there are too many boring people, just like insects, mosquitoes, and flies. Once there are too many of them, it will only make people feel disgusted. Too many, in itself, is a sin. Can saving these bastards reflect your greatness? Boy, Gilgamesh suddenly opened his eyes, and the pressure that pervaded his body began to erupt. I thought that you were a smart person who could fight against the great hero as a human. At least you have some value in your existence. That's why I left you a chance to submit to me and be under my control. However, I don't need a bastard who dares to attack the king. Along with this sentence, an amazing sense of oppression spread from Gilgamesh's body. However, in the face of this sense of oppression, Noah's performance was abnormally calm. Are you done? If you're done, then it should be my turn, right? Noah raised his eyes and looked straight at Gilgamesh. Since the little Holy Grail, transformed by Tomonori Kenzai, has already fallen into your hands, and you are still collecting the souls of the servants, then either you snatch this result from Tomonori Kenzai, or Tomonori Kenzai gave it to you himself. Am I right? Indeed, Shinji was given to me by that insect. The corner of Gilgamesh's mouth rose. I have also prepared the Holy Grail here. Do you want to open the gates of hell together? Because that insect told me so, it piqued my interest, so I asked for Shinji from him. That is to say, you are indeed in cahoots, right? Noah suddenly laughed. Then, this reason is enough. After saying that, Noah raised one of his hands, and an intricate geometric magic circle suddenly spun out from the surrounding space, covering Noah's body. I don't care about the life and death of all humans, and I also agree with your statement that humans without value have no meaning to live. But, Hero King, our values are still different. In my eyes, those who are pleasing to the eye have the value to be saved, and those who are not pleasing to the eye should disappear as soon as possible. To me, killing without even knowing whether they are pleasing to the eye or not is the most annoying thing. Noah's face was calm. Not to mention, you are in cahoots with those who I think are the most unpleasant and the most trashy people. That is enough reason for me to stop you. If you want to refute me, take out your treasure, Hero King. Noah's words directly made Gilgamesh laugh, and it was a creepy laugh. Don't be too complacent, bastard. After saying that, Gilgamesh also raised his hand, and golden ripples immediately fluctuated in the surrounding space. Just like Noah on the opposite side, the surrounding space was filled with golden ripples. Seeing that the strongest master and the strongest servant in the Holy Grail War were about to explode the tension in the air, in the distance a white comet flashed, cut through the sky, and landed on top of Noah's head. Noah and Gilgamesh raised their heads almost at the same time and looked at the sky. Immediately afterward, riding a holy Pegasus, with the Pegasus flapping its wings, riders slowly descended from the sky and entered the eyes of Noah and Gilgamesh. Humph! Gilgamesh coldly snorted and turned his gaze back to Noah. Then Gilgamesh said such a sentence. Boy, you want to stop me, right? Noah did not answer, but met Gilgamesh's gaze and silently expressed his thoughts. In that case, let's play a game. Gilgamesh suddenly smiled. Listen, boy, I'm going to meet the rare great hero who is also a demigod, and collect his soul into the body of the Holy Grail, Shun Air. Then, I'll use the souls of the 5 servants to open the hole of the Holy Grail and release all the evil inside. If you want to stop me, then give it a try. But you have to remember, boy. Gilgamesh looked in the direction of Noah, as if he wanted to show something, and stretched out a hand. Once the game starts, you can't stop halfway. I'll leave Saber and Ryder on your side to you. You can please me as much as you want. As soon as the sentence was finished, a huge magic light beam suddenly shot out from Noah's direction and fell on Gilgamesh's body. Boom! An intense shockwave exploded out. Looking at the impact and flames in front of him, Noah slowly lowered his hand. At the same time, Ryder rode on the Pegasus and landed on the ground. He softly called out to Noah, Master, should we chase after him? Ryder's question was clear to everyone. Gilgamesh had already escaped. Ryder did not ask who the other party was, nor did he ask about the current situation. He only asked a question that required instructions and did not ask anything else. But how to chase after him? Gilgamesh's aura had already disappeared, and it was impossible to catch up. Noah stared at the place where Gilgamesh was a second ago, ignoring the impact and flames. He turned his head and looked in another direction. There, the dying Yin Feng Chili began to move his body, intending to crawl in the other direction of the forest. In response, Noah raised his hand again and pointed it in the direction of Yin Feng Chili. In the next moment, the familiar precise geometric pattern rotated in front of Noah's palm again. It emitted a strong light and condensed all the flowing mana. Then, the mana that turned into a light beam passed through the space, brushed past the atmosphere, and fell on the dying Yin Feng Chili. Ah! Yin Feng Chili let out his last scream, and his body was directly annihilated in the huge magic light beam, vanishing into thin air. Boom! The ground was directly blasted apart by the undiminished power of the magic light beam, and violent wind and fire waves shook the ground, causing pieces of gravel to scatter in all directions. At this moment, the ground that had been directly hit by Noah's magic light beam several times was no longer whole. Together with the surrounding forest that was still burning, it was as though it had been hit by a meteorite and turned into an incomplete purgatory. Noah raised his head and looked at the deep night sky. and his voice echoed. There are more and more people that need to be dealt with, that you're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.